Okay, it is Thursday, August 13th, 2026. We are in the Lunenburg High School, Middle School Collaborative Room today. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Meeting Law, please be advised this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel and maybe on Facebook Live, maybe not, and on the Public Access Facebook page, and will be uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. If you want to join via Zoom to make public comments or participate in that way, there is a link or a call-in number that's on our agenda, which can be found at lunenburgma.gov under the Finance Committee agenda. And with that, if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. By way of announcements, I guess, and maybe just, we have one member, Anna Lockwood, is on our Zoom, so if we do have to vote, it will be roll call for now, at least. By way of announcements, 2 weeks from today, August 27th, we'll have a public hearing related to the special town meeting, which is also an announcement that occurs on September 3rd here in the Lunenburg High School, Middle School auditorium. Does anyone else have any announcements? All right. Is there any public comment from the public? And if anyone on Zoom has any, you can raise your hand.
I do not see them on Zoom.
Okay. Any public comment from the committee?
I have a comment. Actually, we'll have a more extensive comment at the end pertaining to an agenda item request for a future meeting. But I wanted to make everybody aware that earlier today I filed a disclosure of appearance of conflict of interest. I've done this is my third or fourth disclosure. My former spouse is an employee of the schools. Mass state law does not recognize former spouses as immediate family. There is no conflict of interest. However, I have a child support agreement which can periodically be adjusted based on both parties' incomes. And so as a result of that, I regularly file these disclosures so that everybody knows. I've only recused myself once in 8 years of service during a contract negotiation when I was on the school committee. I don't anticipate any conflicts in my current role, but it is on file. And then secondly, tonight is my third wedding anniversary. I'm pretty sure that the current Mrs. Beardmore is not watching, but happy anniversary. And
Happy anniversary.
she's allowing me to spend it with you, so. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, there's no town manager or finance director report out of the fact that later on they will do their quarterly reports. So as it relates to current business, we have 4 items kind of on the agenda. They are additional special town meeting articles. There's 3 articles, kind of 2 articles, if you, depending on how you view it. One should be passed over. We've asked for school finance status, quarterly reports, status of grants, health insurance savings. We've asked for town finance quarterly reports, as well as a status of the capital projects. As part of the special town meeting articles, there's been a lot of chatter, discussion around free cash and other sources of revenue. So we will also have a little presentation from town manager on free cash and other sources of money. But the way I would like to conduct today is to first ask Matt to present his article Then ask Jen to go through the, town manager, to go through that presentation, and then we'll continue on with the Finance Committee's article and their finance status reports, and then end up with the town finance reports. So there's a lot of material. I know everyone that's on the committee has probably gotten many, many emails with a lot of attachments. So there's a lot of material to go through tonight. I think the critical thing is to get through the first discussions on the articles. But it is good from my perspective to get into that cadence of hearing the quarterly reports. It's been a while since we've actually done that with the kind of turnover in the town and school offices. So with that, Matt, if you want to.
Are you presenting, or are you the first presentation? I wasn't planning on it.
Yeah, he wasn't going to present. He's just going to have it in front of him so that he can look up other
Sounds
stuff.
good. I can get that.
Having help on all this threw a real wrinkle in me. So. Although you are recruited to come over into the finance committee meetings too. You can get an extra credit or
And this is
something.
warrant methodology? Okay.
Yep.
Sweet. Let me share that and I'll put it on the projector for you. Should be all set. Is that your first slide?
Yeah, you want a presentation?
Yes. This bar here should be Hoping that.
Bottom right.
Yep, okay. Why did we do that? Here we go. Technical difficulty.
All right. Are you good? All right, my name is Matt Nazarenko. I'm at 79 Robs Hill Road in Lunenburg. Little background on me. I am not from Lunenburg. We moved here in 2017 from Chicago. I grew up in Rochester, New York. My wife grew up in a rural town in Indiana. We have 2 kids. Alexandra is going into 8th grade, and Anna is going into 6th grade. All here, they love Lunenburg, our next door neighbor's teacher. It's great. So how I got started with this started back in March when the budget was coming up and middle school sports were not on any of the budgets. So we asked the school committee what it would take to reinstate middle school sports. The question I asked was, I have a check, I want to put a number on it, what's the number? And I could not get an answer with that number. So I filed a public request to get files from the school to try to get that number. And then multiple other sports were cut, as well as transportation as a result of the override. And a group of parents got together and decided that at current state, citizens petition was the best way to move forward with trying to request transportation funds and reinstating all sports. So the number for 151, 3, 38, 38 is the number to reinstate all sports, not just middle school sports, and transportation for the upcoming school year. I come from corporate world, working for publicly traded companies, private equity backed, et cetera, working on P&Ls and presenting budgets. So I use the methodology that I used in corporate world. I'm not from municipal finance, so apologies if this is how it's not done in municipal finance world. But what I did was I looked at the file that I had, used every known number that existed, which is the collective bargaining agreement for the teachers and the coaches. That's towards the end of the collective bargaining agreement. That was the known rate, and then I had to use some compounding annual growth rate to project costs for next year based on looking at 23, 24, 24, 25, and then last year, 6.5% roughly was the compounded annual growth rate that was chosen to apply to any additional costs such as transportation, equipment, huddle licenses, et cetera. So I was able to build a line item P&L for every single sport projecting for the next year, assuming a constant rate of participation as well as waiver rates. So the waiver rates for the last 3 years were taken into effect, both with the sibling discounts and full waiver discount. It's roughly 80%. It's not an exact number, but if you want to use a swag, 80% is the waiver rate for the town. So that is where we were at. There was an update because the AD sent out the updated athletic fees for the upcoming year. I thought it was $400 flat with no discount. That was changed, so that only affected the revenue side, not the cost side. So I do have the numbers for just middle school sports, excluding golf, skiing, and women's lacrosse. Those were the 3 varsity and JV sports, whatever you want to call them, that were cut. So there's 2 models to look at. One is the direct cost, and then there's also an allocated cost, and then we have the revenue component that goes into that as well. The school file was fairly comprehensive that I received, so I kind of have to treat that as the gospel. I was not able to get any confirmation from schools on any of these numbers. These are my numbers. So where we landed was for the upcoming season, including all of the sports, transportation costs would be $103,247.15. This is for round-trip transportation to the games, waiting, then returning for all sports, including cheer. The cut sports direct cost was $48,091.23. That is all middle school sports, golf, skiing, and lacrosse. One issue I have with skiing is that skiing is a co-op and Lunenburg is the host, so I have to treat the number like it is the full team. Lunenburg does not have 12 kids on the ski team. I'm unsure of the exact number. I know of 3. So I don't know that exact number, but these were the numbers that were provided to me, so I kind of have to go with it. There's a little bit of, I don't know how the co-ops work with where the funds come from, how they get spent on that. So the total number that we came up with was $151,338.38. There's a lot of 3s and 8s there. So the warrant article is to pull this from certified free cash or other available funds. That language was chosen due to DLS language around other available funds and the definitions that they have provided. On the next slide, there is a breakdown of every single sports transportation cost for next year and direct costs for next year. There are 646 quote-unquote athletes. So my daughter, Alexandra, would count as 3 of those, doing field hockey, indoor and outdoor track. So I was not going to pay the money to have files redacted. That would cost me money to get the names, so to get the number of actual athletes. I'm sure the school has that. And then there's 157 individuals who play the sports that were cut. One additional note is that there are a significant number of allocated expenses that are divided amongst the sports. So middle school sports and these cut sports did take a fair brunt of the allocated expenses. That's what I refer to them in corporate world. So you take your AD costs, your trainer costs, the huddle costs, kind of everything. And what I did was I just chopped it by 29. Well, I chopped it by quarter, so fall, winter, spring first, and then the number was divided by 3, and then the number of sports to get the allocated cost per sport. Even though some of those are not, like middle school sports would not have huddle, but still the $11,000 was divided amongst those should they be reinstated. Next slide is the net impact of cuts. So net is revenue, revenue as a plus, direct cost as a minus, and allocated overhead as another minus. So in this scenario, with the cut sports absorbing $37,260 of allocated overhead, which was already in the budget. So this number is already being divided amongst the sports that remain, the 20 sports that remain. It's a $30,000 roughly net impact. And in every scenario, middle school track and middle school cross country are net revenue positive to the athletic program, but they were cut. There were 46 individuals on middle school track paying $275 a pop, and they had almost no expenses outside of transportation.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. The Zoom meeting window is different. I was trying to fix that.
Okay.
We're good now.
An additional item is that there's an MIA rule, number 53. Middle school athletes are not allowed to play up unless there's a roster spot. An upperclassman cannot be cut in favor of a middle schooler. For sports like track, this is not an issue because it's an individual sport. For oversubscribed sports like basketball, this would mean that middle schoolers would not be able to play at all. They have no option. They would have to go play for a club or another vehicle outside of the school. because we just don't have roster spots for them with JV and varsity as it's currently constructed. So this is the basis for the article and all of the math behind it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, before we get to questions, I did send this file to the superintendent, and I think I got confirmation that all of the math looks accurate. Is that correct?
Based on our brand new athletic director and our assistant business manager, and working it, it does appear to be accurate.
I know that the math is wrong.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, so,
We'll go through and point it out on each slide.
here's what I'm gonna recommend. Okay, so, one of the recommendations I wanted to have anyways on this is there's another factor at play here, which is even if this article does pass at special town meeting, the school department and the school committee is under no obligation to use its funds for the intended purposes, right? That's law. We got an opinion from our attorney, confirmed. So, as a,
Luigi Mangione is now expected to plead guilty to federal charges.
it is unrelated to this discussion.
Council.
Yeah, so council confirmed that. Okay, so that is one thing that we all need to keep in mind. As we move into our public hearing in 2 weeks, where ideally we would be making a recommendation on this, as well as sometime in that general timeframe, the select board would be making a recommendation on this. Alternatively, we make a recommendation at the special town meeting itself. What I would ask, and I have asked of the chair of this school committee, is that the school committee actually meet. They're not scheduled to meet, but I really would like them to meet between now and that time to take up this article. I think you can discuss the merits of the numbers and everything else and come up with a position on it, you know, in your own form at that time.
August 26th,
Okay, so August 26th.
the day before you guys meet.
Okay, we're used to that.
It's my fault, I have surgery.
That's okay, no blame. I think no one wanted to be here in this situation. August is usually our skip month, but we were also in recess, right? Like, so that's kind of a couple points on this. The other point that I want to just put on the table now is, and we'll get into this in a minute, is as of right now, there is no free cash, okay? And we'll get into the why associated with that. There is a potential other source of revenue that relates to the snow and ice, and I always forget the name, the RAP coming in, the recovery assistance for snow and ice. And because of the way we funded things at town meeting, that potentially that could be used as a source. Additionally, because we're going through a lot of the financials of the town right now, we may identify additional sources that could be the source of this article. As a citizen's petition, it gets funny because in the end, you are the one that needs to decide as the mover of the article. Now, the town body, the legislative body can change that by vote, and there's all sorts of maneuvers that could go that way. But what I really think the tricky part on this is, A, do we agree with the numbers? And I think school committee needs to get to that with the school department. And then B, will they actually support, if this were to pass, would they use it for the intended purposes? And then C, we got to come up with what is the funding mechanism for this. So those are all the things that we got to work out as a community related to this article over the next few weeks. And with that, I would entertain questions from the Finance Committee. Go ahead.
First of all, it's a pleasure to meet you in person. We've been communicating via text and email. This is more of a comment than a question. Thank you for doing this. I know that this was not necessarily well received in the early going by anybody. But this is what advocating for your kids looks like. And I appreciate the work that you did. And in my opinion, what you had to go through to get here is unfortunate. I completely understand why, particularly when you've moved past the point of we're not budgeting this, we're not doing it. The school department moves on to other things and they're not set up to resource the kind of project that you're working on. And so I understand precisely why you ran into the hurdles that you ran into, but nevertheless, it's inconvenient and difficult and frustrating. And I appreciate your perseverance in doing this. And then, lastly, there's going to be a conversation that's going to occur both here tonight and over the course of the coming weeks about the appropriateness of using free cash to fund anything or one-time funds to fund anything. And we have a recent history a not as recent history in Lunenburg, a history that goes back nearly a couple of decades of avoiding doing that. And it's put us in a rather strong financial position that hopefully we can leverage at some point for something like building a school building or something along those lines. That being said, in recent history, we have used one-time funds to fund operations. We did it for fiscal year 26 that we just ended. And I think we need to keep that in mind. It is not supported by our fiscal policies, which frankly are in need of updating, considering the overall financial condition that we find ourselves in. And that needs to be a conversation that the Finance Committee has together with the Select Board over the coming months. Hopefully we can do it before the thick of budget season. But this is an incredibly difficult situation, and I hope we can find the money. I would absolutely like to find the money, and I, for one, am not hindered by the use of one-time funds to fund this. I think that there is now precedent. The school committee last year accepted that precedent, and we need to move forward. And if we're not going to do that anymore, then we need to decide that as a school committee and as a finance committee that those are actions that we are not going to take, and articulate why. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No. Okay, and I do agree that we have to have some discussions on our policies. We had that kind of in our plan for the remainder of this year prior to budget season. I think personally, I won't be at the public hearing and I won't be at a special town meeting. I had other obligations, unfortunately. So I will make my opinion known on, I think we find ourselves in some bad situations right now from decisions that were made on how to use ESSER funds. I think we did limp through with some free cash last year, but as a general policy, I don't think we should be using free cash to solve operational problems. Now, we can talk about setting the equations different, so maybe we don't end up with as much free cash, and we're gonna have discussions with DLS as to why that may or may not be a good idea. I do think we have policies for a reason, and we should, to the maximum extent possible, kind of live up to those. In the end, I think $150,000 is a much different discussion than $1 million or, something like that. I don't want to be overly dogmatic on things. I do understand the implications associated with no transportation and cutting sports, and especially where some of the sports we cut potentially were actually revenue-driving sports. However, we got a lot of work to do also to identify what is the source of funding, because it isn't free cash. There is no free cash available at this moment. So what is the source of funding for this? And that's what I think collectively we'll work through. And so, yeah. Yeah, Tony, I can take that. You got to come up to a microphone.
So I don't want to go through line by line, but the one thing that I want to make sure everybody is clear, the number of athletes, the 640, we've had this discussion and we've done this research. There are not 640 athletes. And by using that number as the basis for all the other numbers, it has generated an error that's like a magnitude of 2. So what happens in the sports numbers, and this is something that's kind of confusing, but they count slots on sports, not people. When you go and count the number of students that participate in any sport, whether they participate in 1, 2, or 3 sports, the number is usually between 250 and 330 kids, depending on what offerings and what time of year. By having that number be so big, it's throwing everything off. And what that means is, I don't know if we need that. That just alters everything, right? We had this conversation when we had a meeting with the sports boosters in the springtime. And Lockwood was very determined to get this number, so we had this number. We had it for the spring. It is never that high. And this goes back to this thing that has been said multiple times in multiple formats that is not true. People say half the kids in Lunenburg participate in sports. At best, you have half of half. None of the kids in the primary school can participate in sports. None of the kids in Turkey Hill can participate in sports. And then you look at only the middle school and the high school, and that's about half the kids. But even that number is a little unrepresentative because a lot of kids are participating in multiple sports. And so the numbers that we need to be looking at aren't slots on teams, but kids. Because if we look at slots on teams, there are going to be times where the teams seem humongous, but they're not. Or there are going to be times where like a kid gets injured and there was a slot on that team for that kid, but they didn't play. And so if we want to have accurate numbers, we need to have kids, not slots on teams. And that's something that throws off all of the calculus for all of the sports numbers.
Can I make one comment?
Yeah, it's actually your time.
Thanks, Tony. Just a comment, as I mentioned when I was giving my presentation, I did account for that. I mentioned my daughter is 3, like she played field hockey, track, but she does pay 3 separate revenue fees. So this year, she's on the hook for $1,200. So like I did, in the file I received, I know the camera's there, I kind of want to go around, Tony started this awkward. But in the file, it does have participants by sport, by season, going back 3 seasons. So you can see a growth or a decline or a stagnation of the particular sport and the slots for the sport that were used. So when I say that there are no slots for basketball, I mean that middle schoolers cannot play up on JV because there were more than 30 kids on JV and varsity last year. There's just no roster spots for them. Versus a sport like track where Coach Karma can accept an unlimited amount of kids and they can just run. It's a little different with roster sizes for certain sports. Baseball can accept a little more, but their MIA does dictate some roster slots for that. But the file does have participation by sport, and it's very strong. Some of the sports were growing at a pretty good clip over the last couple of years, which is very encouraging. Football grew, soccer grew, track grew a lot. I mean, it's very encouraging to see. You can see it on the fields.
So I do want to say, like, I think your presentation was excellent. Like, I think, and maybe there's an error in there that has to be rectified or all that, and you didn't have access to certain information. I think trying to pull together a budget presentation from public records request is much different than if you have access into the systems. I would encourage that the model that was used on this be continued, because there is incredible insight into what the cost of these sports are when making decisions in the future, if we have to make decisions. So again, I do applaud you on that. So if there is nothing else, I thank you for coming in as well.
Okay, one question I have for the board. Am I going to get any help in identifying what the funds potentially could be, or is that just on me to make a motion?
You have to pay attention.
I will pay attention,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. I mean, obviously, this is going to be discussed over the course of the next several hours, right? But I think that, assuming you're going to move forward with your motion, I think that there is probably an agreement that needs to happen with the town manager and the select board to get you into a conversation with town council to make sure that we do this correctly.
Okay, I'd welcome that discussion.
But that would be
I
my
will say-
recommendation.
Yeah, so I would say
Now,
that,
you can disagree all you want,
I don't think it's necessary.
but I think that we need to make sure that we get this thing done right.
Additionally, my understanding, and this may be wrong, with municipal finance town meeting and warrant article If the number needs to be changed down, I think I can do that on the floor.
Yes.
And I would appreciate your advice, school committee's advice, and select board's advice as to what the number needs to be. In talking to some people around town, some are friends with you all. I don't think it's possible at this point to resurrect golf. I'm unsure on skiing because it was already a co-op. I don't even know if we have anybody that skis other than my 8-year-old who may or may not do it. She's debating skiing or indoor track at the moment. And then women's lacrosse. I don't even know if we can field a team. We only had 12 last year, and they were asking 6th graders to play up on varsity, which is, that has a whole other can of worms. So if the number needs to be modified, we need to change things. That's why I built the file the way I have it. I can edit the CAGR, I can edit the coach's stipend, I can go in, there's 15 different sheets in there. So I just want to arrive to a number that's amenable for everybody.
My strong advice on those types of topics is that probably needs some good prep time prior to the just announced school committee meeting.
Yeah.
And some sort of agreement of an if-then statement with the school committee, because you're going to get into all kinds of Title IX issues when you start crossing off one and not another and that sort of thing. So we just have to be very careful.
Yeah, yeah, luckily reinstate, middle school sports are excluded from Title IX.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's only varsity, JV.
Okay, so to answer the question, tonight, we're gonna go through a lot of financials that are gonna show you accounts and where there's underruns and where there's potential sources for it. I do, in the end, I would ask the select, I know, and I see Anna. I would ask that, select board have discussions on this and school committee have discussions on this, and that, we come forward to town meeting with the most responsible way to fund this. Rather than, Matt just, throws a dart at the, the latest budget for where there's an underrun. Anna, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, is the sound okay? I'm not
Yep.
sure how, okay. I just want to thank Matt for his presentation. I think Chris spoke well when he said that, this is a good standard for all of us going forward. I also want to thank Matt for undertaking this and to do the work that he did. I always talk about how the year that the override from 2012 failed, we used to have band of, it used to be like 60, 70 kids. And to this day, we have not recovered from that. It will be devastating for our institution, our school department, if we can't provide, a baseline of a sports program for a high school. And I know Matt didn't really touch much on liability, but I also worry about, very large teams, counting on rides from parents, from this and that. So I look forward to having a discussion with the FinCom, but more importantly now, I just want to thank Matt for his work.
Okay, thank you, Anna. All right, and with that, you know how to get a hold of me. I will be many time zones ahead starting Sunday, but
Enjoy.
you can also get a hold of Peter, who's very knowledgeable on all this too. So,
Thanks.
thank you, Matt.
So I just want to correct something that was said. Title IX does apply to middle school. I have the citation to the statute, 20 USC 1681. Gebser versus Lago Vista is also the U.S. Supreme Court case. Having done this work professionally, I have applied Title IX in middle schools.
Okay. I love when you talk like that too. All right, Jen, are you up next?
Sure. On part or all?
On the free cash and what's the other thing, recovery
Thank you,
swamp?
Mr. Chairman. My head shaking no is that I think some things are going to become apparent as I go through some of this.
I'm kidding.
So before I go into the slides, before you start sharing, to the question of or other available funds, I will circulate this email to the Finance Committee, Select Board, and Superintendent, but I do have an opinion from council. It's a little bit nuanced. You inquired as to the funding source, i.e. certified free cash or other available funds, and specifically whether or not the phrase, quote, or other available funds would authorize a transfer from any funding sources, including the town's stabilization fund, as you identified may be coming in a forthcoming motion. There had been some conversation about stabilization fund, or in any amendment that might be made thereto. Effectively, your question is one of scope. As stated in town meeting time, quote, a motion may not exceed the scope of the article. Based on my general knowledge and town meeting experience, a review of town meeting time as aforesaid and additional research that I have now conducted, I am aware of no case that expressly addresses a transfer from, quote, or other available funds, a phrase routinely used in funding articles at town meetings across Massachusetts and beyond, permits as within the scope of an ensuing motion a transfer from the town's stabilization fund. What I can say, however, is that, quote, articles should be interpreted in a liberal manner and not with strictness or rigidity. The permissible bounds of a motion that exceeds the written words of an article is measured by reasonableness. The test may be characterized thus. Could a reasonable person anticipate the particular motion being presented under the written article? If so, the motion ought to be considered within the scope of the article. Then there's a citation to Carter v. Douglas, which is a Superior Court case that is instructive but not of precedential value per se, as it was a town meeting choices to fund an acquisition $200,000 transfer from unexpected funds, and that was deemed to be within the scope when instead they contemplated borrowing. So he goes on to say, still, I do note that questions of scope, and this is the nuanced position, or portion of this, are ultimately determined not by the petitioners or even by town council, but by moderators who, quote, enjoy broad discretion in that regard. Moderators may legitimately differ in resolving questions on scope, and such rulings may not be distributed if they are within bounds of reasonableness and made in good faith. Whether or not a transfer of monies from a stabilization fund, which is treated somewhat differently than other municipal funds and from which appropriations require a greater quantum of vote, is within the scope of the article, proposing a generic transfer from or other available funds, is a judgment ultimately left to the moderator's decision. And so he did remind me, so clear as mud, but he did remind me that there has been occasion in Lunenburg, and it was recently, where it was at the November town meeting, where the identified funding source was a prior year unexpended capital, and there was a motion from the floor to instead use a stabilization account, and the moderator would not entertain that motion and ruled that out of scope. Okay, so that's about scope. Potentially, it's everything. All right, going to free cash. All right, next slide, please. So I'm sure the Finance Committee has heard this briefing on free cash at more times than you'd like to, but for the public's benefit, free cash is the remaining unrestricted funds of operations of the town's previous fiscal year, net after certain revenue deficits. Free cash is created, or otherwise reduced, by variances to budgeted revenues and expenditures, including local estimated receipts, such as motor vehicle excise tax, meals and room excise tax, licenses and permits, as well as real and personal property taxes. Free cash also includes amounts certified but unexpended from the prior year. And free cash is reduced by deficits in other existing funds, such as capital project deficits, grant account deficits, and may also be reduced by reconciling variances in cash and receivables. Said more simply, next slide, please. Free cash incorporates surplus revenue, so any revenues above and beyond what our estimates are. Budget turnbacks, unexpected funds from operational budget lines. Prior year's free cash, so any budget of free cash that had been certified but was unspent by June 30th, and outstanding property taxes collected from a prior year. Next slide. So the free cash certification process, and on there it moved my green arrow, but the fiscal year ends on June 30th. And then we move into the year-end financial closeout process. This is where we are right now. We finalize revenues and expenditures, reconcile cash and receivables, and make any adjustments. Once we have completed our financial closeout, we then submit that information to the Division of Local Services. That typically occurs in a municipality in late August, early September. That is the typical time. You'll recall last year, we did not submit until, I believe, January due to the transition. But typically, we are sending in early fall our free cash certification to the state. And if you get it in early, you get it back really quick. If you get it in the height of submissions, it can take them a couple weeks to get it back. But usually by a special town meeting, you have free cash certified, and that is why, because usually we're in November. Next slide. So DLS will review that submission. They will make adjustments. They will ask us for additional information before certification occurs. And then once they are complete, they will give us our certified free cash number. Until they give us the notification that free cash has been certified, there is no avenue to expend free cash. It is not available for expenditure. So per the Division of Local Services, because free cash is non-recurring revenue, it should not be used to fund any personnel, program, or initiative that would require expenditures in future subsequent years. A non-recurring revenue source should be restricted to paying one-time expenditures, capital projects, replenishing other reserves. We do not recommend that free cash be budgeted for ongoing operational purposes. DLS recommends that communities adopt a robust free cash policy that addresses... Oh, sorry, thank you. The next slide after that, too. All right. I'll try to remember that, Walter. I'm sorry. DLS recommends that communities adopt robust free cash policies that address the use of free cash, including what percentage should be carried forward to the next year, how to budget for it. They recommend that we generate 5 to 7% of our annual operating budget in order to develop a strong credit rating. The goal is to deter free cash from being depleted in a particular year so that we can always start with a positive balance. And to do that, we need to orchestrate carefully our revenue projections to ensure turbacks. This is a chart that I showed next slide at town meeting showing over 10 years free cash as a percentage of the town's operating budget. In the last several years, you'll see only 3 years in that chart met DLS recommendations of the 5 to 7% operating budget. The town's free cash policy, as it currently stands, despite some calls for adjustment, prioritizes free cash in the following way. The highest priority of free cash should be to increase the balance of the stabilization account until there is at least 5% of the current omnibus budget. We were sitting at 6.3. The next highest priority is to automatically give 10% or to distribute 10% into the OPEB trust fund. Next is to the special purpose stabilization accounts, such as the vehicle special purpose stabilization account. And then, sorry, thank you. And then any monies that remain in free cash may be used for one-time expenditures. Next slide, please. This is our FY26 free cash expenditures as a reminder. We began with $3.35 million in free cash. At town meeting, there was $845,000 transferred into savings account, $435,000 into special one-time articles, $520,000 to offset the snow and ice deficit, and $991,000 to support the capital plan. So we left $562,000 in free cash on the table. You'll recall back at the beginning when I was talking about ways to generate free cash, this will automatically be the starting point for our FY27 free cash. So we know there'll be at least that positive amount. There was one particular expensive project that I had been reserving some money for the fall in the case that an article came forward. Next slide, please. Chris, in the interest of time, this is 6 minutes. I don't know, do you think there's a benefit? Okay, all right. I did share with the Finance Committee this introduction to free cash. If you have not watched this, this is 6 minutes. It says all what I said in another way, but it helps to reinforce the points.
Even
Okay.
to the public, if they
If-
go to DLS.
Or if you just, if, to the public, if you Google DLS free cash video, it'll bring you to this YouTube video. It's 6 minutes, it's the intro to free cash. All right, next slide, please. So, the Winter Recovery Assistance Program. Next slide. So this is funding that we were not anticipating in this fiscal year. The fiscal year 2026 Fair Share Supplemental Bill funded the WRAP program, Winter Recovery Assistance Program, at $100 million. The first $80 million of that was distributed across a formula based on road mileage. So Lunenburg's distribution is $228,000 based on the 86.18 road miles, and $20 million applies to communities that faced extraordinary hardships. Lunenburg does not qualify for that. Next slide, please. The state has listed a litany of types of eligible activities. Basically, anything for snow and ice related, you can apply this funding towards that. You can apply it towards overtime related to snow and ice, not regular payroll, but any other costs related to snow and ice. Next slide. So Lunenburg's FY26 snow and ice deficit was approximately $690,000. I'm still saying approximately because we just did the retro for the collective bargaining agreement. And I just want to make sure that that applied correctly and that we have that exactly. But based on the $690,000, which is where we were when we went to town meeting, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. Let me compare that to your budget first. So the FY26 budget for snow and ice was $355,571. The actual expenditures were just over $1 million. In FY25, $763,000. In FY24, $469,000. Next slide, please. So how did we cure that $690,000 snow and ice deficit? We resolved $520,000 of it with a transfer of free cash under Article 9 of the May 2nd, 2026 town meeting. And we intended to resolve the remainder of the deficit with a year-end transfer. However, the WRAP funds were announced between town meeting and us doing year-end transfers, which negated the need for such a transfer. So, what happens now? So I reached out to DLS. This had been mentioned to me as a potential funding source. Sorry.
I'm sorry. The math here, that's like $60,000 that's left, or do we?
I'm going to get to how.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I can't help but think.
Okay, so there's 228,100. Go back several slides.
Say what?
Right. No.
One more. There you go. We're receiving $228,154.34 through the Winter Snow and Ice Recovery Program.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
But we had,
There's 690,000 deficit.
yep,
We cured 520,000 of it.
right.
This number is not based on our deficit.
170.
This number is not based on our deficit. This number is based on our road miles. The $228,000 is based on road miles. It has nothing to do with our deficit.
I understand that.
Oh, okay.
But it's money. That's $228,000 of real money.
Correct,
We covered 520 of a $690,000 deficit.
correct,
So we've got roughly $170,000 still hanging over.
correct.
So 228 minus 170
Don't-
means we've got about $58,000.
You don't necessarily need to get there. Can we go to the next slide?
Okay.
There we go. Okay, so I reached out to DLS with the question to say exactly this. We have cured 520,000 of the deficit. I included, and Peter, you actually have the whole email to DLS. We had a $690,000 deficit. We cured 520,000 of it with the free cash. How do we need to now apply this WRAP money? Must we first essentially cure the remaining deficit? Can you swap hands with each other? That is not entirely clear. So I have 2 follow-up questions for DLS. Let me get through this slide because the second one is on here. So this is the written guidance specifically quoted from DLS. These are not my words. This is what they have submitted thus far for guidance on the RAP money. I do want to remind folks, this is not a typical fund that we receive. We are receiving guidance around this because, and guidance is forthcoming because this is new, this is very much this year. So there are unanswered questions here. If a municipality has extinguished, in whole or in part, the FY26 snow and ice deficit by an appropriation of an available fund prior to June 30th, 2026, any RAP reimbursement pertaining to the amount of the FY26 snow and ice deficit may be treated as follows. If the deficit was funded by a free cash appropriation, so there's a, if the whole deficit was, one of my follow-up questions is part, right? But I think that it's gonna apply that you can apply the whole 228, however you like. That's, my educated guess is that 228,000 in full is available for appropriation, okay? So if the deficit was funded by a free cash appropriation, the RAP reimbursement in an equal amount or less may be reserved in a special revenue fund and appropriated for any legal purpose until June 30th, 2027, with appropriation by the legislative body town meeting. Any amount remaining after June 30th must close out to free cash. Or, if the amount is not placed in a special revenue fund, the RAP reimbursement may close out to the general fund and be immediately and become part of certified free cash prior to expenditure. The choice between those 2 options, whether to create a special revenue fund or to allow it to immediately close out to free cash, is the select board's decision. The select board has an agenda item on August 18th, next Tuesday, to discuss this. So the second question that I said that there were 2 questions baked into here. The second question is, can the select board restrict the special revenue fund? So, for example, could the select board say this is a special revenue fund only for athletics transportation, only for athletics and transportation, and therefore further restrict an appropriation at town meeting? Or can the select board only say it's a special revenue fund available for any purpose at town meeting up to the legislative body? So those are the 2 follow-up questions. I am going to try to speak to DLS tomorrow on those. But ultimately, the select board needs to make that first decision of which way to go, and that is agendaed for next Tuesday. So I said some of this is gonna kind of work its way out, perhaps in one way or another, or become more or less apparent as we go forward. All right, next slide, please. And the last funding source that I was asked to talk about specifically is whether the Finance Committee Reserve Fund is available. Next slide, please. So Finance Committee Reserve Fund is funded at $185,000. Under state statute, reserve funds are to provide for extraordinary or unforeseen expenditures and require a majority vote of the Finance Committee. Extraordinary or unforeseen expenditures refer to expenses that could not be anticipated before the setting of the tax rate or could not be determined when the budget was improved. Generally, if a diligent budget process could have anticipated the cost, it does not qualify as unforeseen. However, if the definition of an emergency falls in the first instance to the Finance Committee and can include the circumstances where delays to act would be prohibitively costly or when the requested amount is too small to justify the expense of calling a special town meeting, common sense should prevail. Ultimately, reserve transfers cannot be used to bypass or render invalid legitimate town meeting decisions or if the budget review approval process in cities. So I think it probably doesn't qualify for Finance Committee reserve. Do you want me to go straight into capital unexpended?
Could I just ask a question relative to the?
Yeah, why don't we have, if we can have some questions.
So, Can you talk in layman's terms about what a special reserve fund, what we think it is?
So a
And how we would potentially establish and administer it? Like, is this like beyond
we have
something
all,
that's feasible or?
no. So special reserve fund is established by the statute itself that creates it. And so I have not dug into the statutory enabling language for the RAP funds. I'm assuming, based on that guidance, that it specifies that it's a RAP special reserve fund. Karen, how many special reserve funds do we have?
We only have
Two? Okay. So, but it does not need to be created by town meeting. It's created by statute itself. And so,
And then we could theoretically appropriate that to whatever we want.
except for that one question, whether the select board could,
Yeah.
right, but yes.
Assuming the select board is not restricted and just
Correct.
puts it in that fund and says, here it is, town meeting, do what you want with it, theoretically, that would be
So-
available.
Yeah, can you go back, Walter, to the one where it has the white box? Sorry, that's the one. Okay. Where does it say any legitimate purpose? I thought in here. Any legal purpose. Any legal purpose. You can use it for one time. You can use it for operations. You can, any.
Where I'm hung up on is the special reserve fund, what it means, how you establish it, like, but it sounds to me like it's,
special reserve means it's reserved for that reason only.
You can't grab it for
You
something
can't
else.
grab it for something else, it's reserved for that reason only.
And whatever that reason is what the statute that created it says it is.
So there's no reason that the select board couldn't put this money aside and allow the use to be for the article that we just heard about?
Legally. No, legally they could do that.
As long as you set it up in that special reserve fund.
Yeah,
But it still has to be appropriated at town meeting.
correct. Must be appropriated by the legislative body. It's not a bypass of that.
and this would be the unexpended balance of that 228, 154.
I believe at this point it's the full 282. I do want to clarify that.
Okay.
My understanding.
But we didn't do a transfer for the hangover on, we
But-
still have snow and ice unresolved deficit.
We still have an unresolved deficit, but we could offset, well, the free cash offset, right? Right. Let me talk to Deb Wagner.
Can you just resolve that within Bill's department?
No.
You're the one-
No, we left, when we did year-end transfers with the finance committee, we said we didn't need to do year-end transfers for snow and ice because this money was coming in.
But again, we only appropriated $520,000 of free cash to address the $690,000 deficit.
I'm going to have the follow-up question with DLS on those two questions.
Okay. Okay.
And so I would anticipate that I'll have those answers before Tuesday at the select board meeting.
Okay.
Are there any other questions,
Clear as mud.
any other questions with respect to free cash, RAP, or finance reserve account? Okay, so you wanted to next do the capital.
Yeah, so there's no presentation for this. You all should have one in front of you. You print out, does everybody have memorandum, capital and outstanding, article report? So first, I want to thank the chair of the committee and finance committee in general for urging that we start delivering these. I think going through this process certainly highlighted to me the reasons why it's necessary. Hopefully, future ones will not take as long since we now have a baseline for a report. To my knowledge, the committee hasn't had a report such as this in at least some recent history. I am looking for your feedback, so if there's additional information that you want to see going forward, shoot me an email. That would be great. So the purpose of this report is to provide a consolidated project-level accounting of open capital appropriations as well as standalone single appropriation articles. It's intended to establish a recurring baseline. Going forward, this report will be issued as part of the town manager's contribution to the quarterly financial reporting package, delivered alongside the finance director and school business manager's report. What I did is I went through in greater detail FY '25 to '27, and FY '24 and prior are only focused on open items. There are items that require further reconciliation, and those items are noted. So for prior year capital plans, the FY '21 capital plan has been fully expended. The FY '22 capital plan has one item remaining, and that's the Flat Hill Culvert Construction Project that is active and under contract. I'm going to go, in the interest of time, fairly quickly through these. I know folks have some familiarity. If you have a question about something as I go, just give me a shout and I'll stop. Okay. So the FY '23 capital plan. There was a records retention project for $62,500 that was particularly scoped as presented to town meeting. I have not seen the basis of that yet for that estimate. While I do believe that we need this records retention funding, I think that we should probably go back to capital. Potentially, we might want to do something different with it. If it was quite particular. It was very particular as presented to town meeting anyways, 36 boxes, whatnot. Public safety, master plan, there's a little bit left with the master plan, although we are near completion with that project with just the final bound reports due on that. Public safety building, engineering design for moisture and drainage. $25,000 per the finance director. This funding can be reappropriated to a future project or to the remainder of the FY '23 capital plan. As a reminder, with our capital plans, if there is an unexpended item in one article, we can transfer that freely to another item within that same capital year. So if there's a lot, I just say that to the public that's listening, if I identify that there's something that can be turned back, but there's a lot of other open big projects in that capital year, it might not be the best one. The senior center HVAC upgrades, there was a change in the building code, which requires that project to be rescoped and go back to capital. There are insufficient funds even despite a transfer, $37,000. Town hall repairs at $96,000. What was presented to town meeting on the slide was that it was building interior work and mechanical systems work, and specifically talked about the 2 furnaces. However, it references the Vertex report, which largely is about interior upgrades. And the facilities director believed that it had nothing to do with furnaces, actually, until we were going through this report and thought it was all interior, and had held off on this project with the unknowns related to town hall. I think it's apparent to me that we may be in town hall for some time, and perhaps we might need to make some of these repairs, although they may need to be rescoped. Here's a great example of why I am so glad you had us do this. The air conditioning for classrooms, primary school, is overexpended by $52,000. It's likely that that is not truly overexpended, that is a misapplication of Green Communities funds and Unitil incentives that we just need to clean up. Page Street culvert project is complete with just $2,000 remaining. Flat Hill Road drainage study. You'll see that there's a partial spend down there. They did work on the detention basin at Cortlandt Circle. Since that work has been completed, there have not been complaints. The DPW director feels that those funds can either stay on hold or maybe returned, either way. FY '24 capital plan. $25,000 project to repair the sidewalks at TCP that will not be going forward. The public safety radio system is complete with $34 left. Turkey Hill Elementary upgrade fire system complete with $2,500 left. Then there is 2 security upgrades, one at Turkey Hill, one at primary school. One is overexpended by $43,000 or $45,000. One is underexpended by $43,000. I wonder if that is just a accounting error that invoices were applied to the wrong items, but nonetheless, they essentially wash. The Marshall and Whalum Pond treatment is active and ongoing and is in conjunction with the FY26 capital project funds. The FY25 capital plan. The townwide keying and public safety radio project phase 2 projects are largely complete. There is roughly $30,000 remaining from the Wallace basketball and tennis court resurfacing project. The Turkey Hill Elementary ADA study, I believe, is still ongoing and active. The window safety film is complete with $3,500 left. Marked police vehicle complete with $25,000 left. Marked for the K9 cruiser, marked police vehicle for traffic, $3,000 left. Library security cameras phase 1 is complete with $8,400 remaining. Security camera upgrades at Town Hall is complete, but I believe I have one more bill. Now here's where it gets interesting. I just talked about a whole host of projects that are complete with roughly $50,000, a little bit more, maybe more like $70,000 remaining. Northfield Culvert, Kelly's Pond, $200,000. That project is still under design. And so when the design is back, we'll go out to bid on construction. That's when we'll know the reality of that $200,000. Well, even before we go out to bid, when design is final.
Is the design part of the 200,000 or is that separate?
Separate. Yeah, that was a prior appropriation for the design. All right.
Can I, are we still on 25?
About to not be.
Just a question on the Turkey Hill study. Seems to me that got reported out like in the spring of '25. So that should not be active.
I can double check that too.
I'm sorry?
I can double check that.
Okay.
All right. To be fair to the superintendent, I transmitted this to her today as well,
Yeah.
and she happens to be short of
Yeah, I get
two
it.
staff members.
I get
So,
it.
FY26 capital plan, there is, the 2 patrol cruisers are complete. I think there's one showing a deficit due to a double transfer. I don't think that deficit is real. Library HVAC, the project is underway, in progress for design. Town Hall HVAC. This project is one of the 2 town hall projects that were on hold.
That capital cleanup that we did at the last town meeting, where we had to clean up the funding source, and so now we are proceeding with that. Senior Center and Teen Center floor replacements are complete. There were change orders due to the second floor that required that project to go over.
We don't have final invoices left yet, but this particular capital year had a contingency line in it. Public safety building, designed for the second floor office space, a design professional has been engaged and is providing donated services. Same with the town hall window replacement project. The backhoe has been purchased. The senior center funding design is not underway as of yet.
The 110 is complete. The North Cemetery expansion project is underway with Denison really engaged. Passios. This is substantially complete with $6,700. And then this is the phase when not complete decommissioning, but the and with some additional comments which are denied. Road services pilot, I have not launched this at $50,000. Stormwater consultant is active and ongoing. Project estimators, the facilities director has not utilized this $50,000 as of yet, although he is getting ready for capital submissions, and I know he has called out to some folks that we might be using them, potentially get a professional quote for the full asbestos remediation at TC Passios is one item that he's kind of talking about using project estimators for. And then there is where we pulled TC Passios out of the operating budget for FY27 and utilized free cash to fund any operations or eventually decommissioning at $121,800 and the special assistant to the assessor position at $27,500. And those are the totality of the standalone articles. There are also from FY02 to FY21 some legacy balances of about $13,000, which after brief research will likely be able to be closed out.
For example, decommissioning of portions of TC Passios and grant writing services pilot are both from the same article. I suspect these are encumbered funds from the general operating budget.
I had actually put all of these articles. There's three articles in that they are numbered articles. They're outside of the operating budget articles, outside of the capital articles. You'll see two under the 17th article line. I can pull up the one there for that.
These are all individual articles.
That's correct.
They're outside capital.
Right, they're outside capital, they're outside operating. I mean, there's sometimes that we had a table that there were three standalone and that's this case here, where there were three standalone appropriations, but they're being funded outside taxation.
Okay.
Do you still need me to agree with that? Okay.
Okay, any questions on this? I do want to thank you for pulling this together. This is my 7th year in this committee, and it's the first time I've actually seen this report. And I think it's really good in my opinion.
I do have one more question, I'm sorry. On the standalone articles, are those treated effectively, like, let's say we don't expend the grant writing? That would be treated, how would we release those funds? Would they roll over to free cash?
There's two ways.
Okay.
We could decide to close them out to free cash, or we could reappropriate them at a town meeting and treat them like free cash. So if you look at, for example,
Unexpended funds.
unexpended funds. So if you look at last November's town meeting, we did not have certified free cash, and we had use for one-time purchases or obligations, and we transferred from prior year unexpended capital. It would be a similar mechanism to transfer from prior year unexpected articles.
Now, if I may, these funds that have not been appropriated, just like you said, we did that transfer on the fall town meeting. Those could also theoretically be available funds to be used for the article that Mr. Matt brought
Say that
forward.
again. So which one?
So the unexpended monies from capital.
From capital, yes. Unexpended monies from capital could also be used as a source. The one thing that I would caution about that is, as I said, if there are other projects in that year, for example, that the construction project for the Kelly Road culvert is a great example. If there's a lot of other outstanding projects, you usually don't want to close them out until you're pretty sure that everything is going to wind down as it should, no more change orders, and then those are safe for reappropriation. But there's certainly some on here that are safer than others, so to speak.
I seem to recall that unexpended capital is covered by fiscal policy. No?
I didn't look at that, but can look at
I don't, you know,
think it's-
I've never seen anything covering unexpended special article, you know, but I
I know that
think.
there's a piece in the financial policy that says that a funding source, a potential fund, like the first funding source for I don't know if it's
capital.
first, but for capital is
Unexpended.
prior year unexpended capital, but I don't know if the reverse is also true.
Okay, yeah, I think you're right. I think
But
you're right. But it would almost serve to reason that that's where you should
Well,
go with that money.
free cash is typically what funds capital, a lot of times, or prior year capital, which is a 6 of one, half dozen of the other, frankly. So it's one time, it's all one-time money that should be used for one-time type of things generally.
I think it's reasonable to say that the capital program from fiscal year X is now closed and we have remaining balance associated with that as other funding sources. I think it's something different to say, hey, we're gonna take money from some article that was voted and has not yet started, let's say like grant writers, and say like, we're gonna appropriate that money from them, therefore killing what was a vote in the past. Because I don't think any reasonable person would expect that type of situation to have occurred.
I think looking at FY '23, although FY '23 in particular is not fully expended, and there are projects that are active and ongoing, there could be some discussions around FY '23 based on what I see on here. But
So I think we should be thoughtful and prudent about how we do either one, right? If leaving the unexpended capital alone for a minute. Now, I think unexpended capital should roll into future capital. I feel like
it's quicker.
we underfund capital all the time. So we, you know, like, I feel like that's potentially bad business. I know it's like the least bad decision exercise we're in again, so I recognize that. I think where these individual items, though, these individual articles, in my mind, it's better fidelity to town meeting to say, we're taking this article and we're moving the money from it into another article and have that as an active town meeting vote, rather than just allowing it to roll into free cash and it just poof disappears and town meeting has nothing to say about it. So in my mind, it's better to reappropriate the money.
So it depends, sometimes if you have, you know, de minimis values, it's easier just to close it out to free cash, like.
I'm sure, like, again, I think there
But as a
are
general-
prudent arguments for, you know, exceptions to what I just said, but I think generally speaking, wouldn't it make sense to let town meeting take another crack at that money?
Well, I think that town meeting certainly believes that when it votes for capital, that it thinks that the
money's going to
projects that it
capital.
votes for are going to happen, so
Right.
that supports your. Any other questions?
Okay. Jody, you gonna present? Okay.
Thank you. Tony, why
Good evening, everyone.
Good
It's
evening.
nice to see you tonight. I'm going to be presenting on the strategic spending of additional state aid for education. So there's two things that we're marrying together, which both have strong correlations to research, and that's environmental readiness and literacy capacity in order to build a sustainable educational system. And as you can see, there's some quotes here pulled from research, but the dual investment tackles the root cause of academic frustration and classroom disruption simultaneously. And so investing in climate and behavior directly impact academic performance. Next slide. So this is the spending plan in a nutshell. We are going to partially fund a 1.0 reading specialist in primary school through anticipated health insurance savings that for FY27, knowing that we did build in some contingency there when we created the FY27 budget for additional teaching positions that we may be adding. 52 Ignite seats. Ignite is a one-on-one tutoring program, and I'll go into these in more depth during the presentation. It's a one-to-one tutoring program that's completed online. It is something that we received a grant for this year that had outstanding, well, we didn't invest anything, but had outstanding impact on our students' beginning reading skills. We're also hoping to fund through town meeting a 1.0 reading specialist at Turkey Hill Elementary School. Our data proves that this is a needed position. This year we tried to do it with a teacher that was 0.5 working with students with disabilities and a 0.5 reading interventionist, all mushed together. And what we found is that she could not provide any or limited reading intervention support given the fact that her special ed caseload was growing and expanding. At the high school, we are looking to expand the 0.5 assistant principal role to a 1.0 role. That is due to the results of a climate and culture survey and our ability to provide instructional leadership at the high school level, as well as our ability to provide interventions. This year, as you know, we attempted to work with the 0.5 athletic director / 0.5 assistant principal. That did not work out because they are really two full-time jobs. We're looking to, at the high school, to add a 0.4 music teacher. We currently have an individual who is 0.6. This would be increasing her position to 1.0. This would allow us to do a couple of things. One, free up schedules so that students could take additional electives, or it would resolve some of the physical education scheduling difficulties, because she could teach one physical education class outside of her certification area, though not ideal. You may have heard from parents in town that their children are really having trouble scheduling their PE requirement, which is a legally mandated requirement, into their schedules. And then we're looking to add a certified occupational therapy assistant, and we'll talk more about why we're doing this. This was a position that we did not include in the current budget due to a loss of attrition of the person that had the position before. She retired. However, in looking at caseloads and some new mandates coming down from the state, we realized that this addition is important. Next slide, Walter. So one of the things that is important to note is that we are seeing some foundational literacy gaps in our students, especially at K through 2. If those class sizes are approaching 30 students, you'll see later in the presentation that in grade 2 we currently have 30 to 31 students that are scheduled into grade 2. This reading specialist will provide targeted interventions tailored to the students that they have in front of them. And then additionally at the primary school, we're looking to invest in 52 of those Ignite tutoring seats. And as you can see, the research on that high dosage tutoring from Johns Hopkins University shows that that's 5.4 additional months of learning gains. And why that's important is when you think of how long the school year, this is almost another year of growth. It's a little over another half year's worth of growth. Next slide, Walter. Thank you. So we're addressing our staffing, as the headline on this says, is that we're trying to address the fourth grade reading slump. Some early indicators indicate that last year's fifth graders still have some room to grow, and optimizes the high school master schedule. So I've already voiced over what that would look like. I really want to dive into the research, which is kind of my pattern. There is a class size range analysis. So as you can see, we are approaching 29 to 30 students in a classroom. This is based on our rolled over enrollment. A target in kindergarten class would actually be 18 students or less. Keep in mind that our kindergarten teachers also don't have paraprofessionals working with them. So picture, even though our teachers are highly engaged and wonderful, having 20 to 21 newly minted 5-year-olds in your classroom who have not had any school experience yet. The grade 2 numbers are concerning. Actually, all the numbers are concerning. In grade 5, we did not make any reductions in class size because that class is a bubble class to begin with. So we continue to have 5 teachers in grade 5 and 5 teachers in kindergarten. In grades 1, 2, 3, and 4, we are down to 4 teachers. Next slide, please. So the single most determinant effect of a child's success in school is the expertise of their teachers. So the average and above average teacher that perform in the 80th to 85th to 90th percentile can help students achieve 1.5 years of learning. Now couple that with the investment of Ignite seats, that now has 2 years of learning that our children that are most behind can make up. The 3 consecutive years, this is a highly regarded research study, 3 consecutive years of an effective teacher can actively eliminate the average achievement gap between students. But they need to have 3 years of highly effective teaching. And as you can see, I cited the research, Hanushek and Rivkin in their Teacher Quality Handbook, Chapter 18, and that's from the Economy and Handbook of the Economics of Teaching, Education. So diving further into the research, because there's been several questions that I've heard, is why aren't you taking this money and reducing class size in general? And if we dive into the research, keeping in mind that our teachers are excellent and that is the single most important determinant of a child's success in education, if we look at what the next most important determinant of a child's education or an important determinant is a targeted reading interventions. And I cited research from Wozniak and Kim here to show that the effect size using Cohen's scale is moderate to transformative, and this is really, again, getting into providing that small systematic instruction aligned with the science of reading, alters both dosage and pedagogy for struggling readers. So this is a very strong effect size that Kim and Wozniak's research is showing us. Whereas on the converse, general size reduction has a negligible impact. And some of the studies that you'll hear quoted frequently, probably the most popular one is the Tennessee Star research, oft quoted in education. And one of the things to understand is that in order for the class size reduction effect to be positive, you have to reduce class sizes to between 13 and 15 students. That is not something that we are currently able to do. The Filges et al. Study shows us that in a study of 127 students, the typical class sizes of 24 to 21, which are typical, we know we're above that, but the typical class sizes, which is about what we'd be able to reduce our class sizes to, yielded effect sizes near 0 to 0.05. These are negligible impacts on student learning.
What is D? You keep,
It is
D.
the Cohen's effect. So it's a popular scale used in research to interventions on learning and during scientific qualitative based studies.
is there a unit associated with it, or is it a,
There is a unit, I didn't bring my computer up, but it falls into the negligible, moderate, transformative, high, very high
okay.
levels. So again, if we look at the Tennessee Star fallacy, people will often cite this as a reason for reducing class sizes. And again, I can't emphasize enough that that study was done in Texas, and not Texas, Tennessee, and really was dependent on the 13 to 15 student class size range. And then a modern budget reality is that with our district constraints, our budget feasible incremental reductions of 1 to 3 or 4 students produces negligible academic effect size. So that's why we're following the research, we're following the science of reading, and trying to create a plan that is most beneficial to the students. We believe that we are at a critical inflection point with our students' performance, and I would be happy to, once our MCAS scores are unembargoed, to share with you what our MCAS scores are and why we are so adamant about this pathway.
I have a quick question for you, sorry. So you referenced that Tennessee Star study,
Yeah.
which talked about the reduction down to 13 to 15.
Yeah.
Is there any studies that go the other way? Like, why not have just one classroom with 120 kids in it? Like, there's got to be some break on the other side.
There is, and it's about that 30 to 31, and I can get you some citations for that.
Okay.
But it is about at the elementary level, it depends on grade level as well. But at the grade 2 level, 30 to 31 students is certainly pushing.
So that's where you'd see like a negative D factor or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not aware off the top of my head of any Y-based studies that have looked at that, but
Okay.
excellent question. I'll look into that and get back to you. So smaller class sizes help every child, whereas reading specialists only help struggling readers, is a fallacy. You'll hear that a lot. And spreading resources universally, so across all classrooms, ends up diluting the impact of those. And again, that Cohen's effect size of 0.05, broad structural reductions spread resources regardless of academic need, resulting in virtually no difference. So this is not looking at our students that are struggling the most, rather it is spreading resources across all students. What the Fidelity implementation is the high impact interventions, so following the science of reading, following tailored, personalized instruction for students. It really helps in creating a lessening of the achievement gap for students that are struggling. And then it also helps classroom teachers with a rather large class size because now they have a thought partner and they have somebody that's actually delivering services to struggling students. So in addition, struggling students almost need a double dose of instruction. And this will allow teachers to provide generalized instruction, and then that double dose will happen in a smaller group. So those are some of the objections that I've heard so far. So again, I talked in my opening about how the social, emotional, and behavioral support of creating a safe learning environment for students is important. The 1.0 FTE transition of the assistant principal at the high school is designed to do that. We've cut, over the past several years, several programs that are designed to help students that have adjustment issues to school and to high school and who need extra support. We, last year, really had one assistant principal who was able to do that effectively because our other assistant principal was really had to focus on athletics. So I think it's important to restore to assistant principals at the high school for that behavioral support. And also, again, as I said, we have a problem. It was identified in my public evaluation. We have an issue with climate and culture at the high school, and this is one step because teachers are really requesting that their leadership be visible instructional leaders, and so this is one way of addressing that. I mentioned that there's a new state mandate that's coming down. So schools have been using something called cool down spaces where students go when they're having emotional dysregulation problems. Recent changes in the state law eliminate or vastly reduce the use of cool down spaces. In fact, you can no longer use a cool-down space with very many conditions, but one of them is an outside doctor and the school mental health support folks need to sign off on it for the students, which really creates, it's de-incentivizing using cool-down spaces, which we understand is the goal of this. But what do? Right? We have dysregulated children in our classrooms. We have dysregulated students that are able to be very disruptive to all students' learning in the classroom. And so what research shows us is a better way than the cool-down space is to catch the child when you start to see the antecedent to the behavior, is to offer them an alternative and to offer them some sensory stimulation to help them re-regulate themselves. We received a grant from the Department of Public Health, some earmark funding last year, that we invested in the sensory materials. There's two staff roles that are most beneficial in utilizing these, helping our staff utilizing these, and that is a BCBA and an occupational therapist or a certified occupational therapy assistant, here referenced as CODA. We quite honestly can't afford another BCBA. That is why we are not asking for another BCBA, and that would actually, Mrs. Hanscom and I have discussed this, and that would actually be our preference, but because we can't fund that, we're going with the next best thing, which we often do, and asking for a certified occupational therapy assistant. So our first priority is strengthening core literacy instruction. And we have discovered that through a comprehensive needs assessment that was done with constituents, a variety of constituencies, and then stabilizing the learning environments. And again, as I state on this slide, educational research shows that academics and behavior are inseparable. Emotional dysregulation will block your reading comprehension or your ability to learn to read, and building stable learning environments is vital to academic success. Now, Mr. Chair, you had also asked me to prepare a report on grants. Would you like me to keep going or stop for questions?
Why don't we stop for a minute and see if there's any questions?
Can I add something first? I want to make clear that we're not saying that class sizes don't matter, because they do. And especially with our ability to retain those top educators that we need so desperately, that we do have in this district currently. What you're seeing here is us triaging and making very targeted, strategic trade-offs for the best use of such limited funds. So we're not saying that class sizes don't matter, but when we're dealing with the amount of money that we have, Dr. Fortuna has determined this to be the most efficient use of the money.
Research has
Yeah.
determined it.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
A couple. Thank you, Dr. Fortuna, for bringing this to us. You know, I've been a supporter from you, for a year. You've brought transparency, knowledge to Lunenburg Public Schools, so I really appreciate all of the information that you're given, and I agree with it. But I have a couple of questions. I love the Ignite program. I know a lot of schools that use it. It's not a teacher, it's remote. 52 seats. I want the public to know that this is like a one-time expenditure per year. This isn't a salary that's going to be, over and over and over. It could be, if it proves successful, then this might be something that you would want to build into the budget. The 52 seats, is it 52 students or 52 revolving seats?
It's 52 revolving seats.
Okay, so multiple students can take advantage of it, kids can come in and out. So I guess this is just a plug for the Ignite program. And you will go on and talk about a grant that might be possible for that program. The reading specialist that you would like to hire or go, have a 1.0 like person in there. It's, the funding source is health insurance savings. Is that a guaranteed funding or?
It is not a guaranteed
Okay,
funding source.
so none of these like this grant that might cover the 52 Ignite seats and the funding from HIS is not guaranteed.
We realize we're walking a precarious tightrope here,
Right.
and that this state aid could turn out to be one-time funding and not something that's built into the budget annually. We realize that, however, in order to best serve our students, I think we have to do something now. Our students only have one shot at this. We only have a limited window to close early literacy gaps for students and to really prepare them for more complex comprehension tasks, to help them be critical consumers of information. And that's why, with the availability of these funds, this is the plan. We don't need things, right? We don't need let me rephrase that. We do need things. We could use many more things. However, we need professionals with deep knowledge about what they're doing. Just like the classroom teacher, their knowledge greatly impacts the amount of growth that a student makes. Research has shown us that. We need to lean into the expertise of these specialized roles in order to make the most use of the time, the limited time that we're given with children.
Right, and I think my question is, if these are funded by the HIS or a grant, and you do get appropriated funds at town meeting, what's going to happen to the money that we give you that you will not be utilizing? Will that go back? Will you send that back to wherever it came from, or will you reallocate it within the school budget?
So with the only one of these because we've written many of our grants for FY '27, which I'll go through in a minute. The only one with a pending grant that we didn't find out about until late in the year is the Ignite tutoring.
Okay.
Should we get that funding, it won't be until second semester, so I want to be able to start our students as soon as we can within the year.
So we return the other half?
I think what my recommendation on that is if you do get that grant, what I would expect from either the school department or the school committee is to tell the finance department what you're gonna do with the money associated with that.
Absolutely.
We need to keep that transparency. And then I did want to point out one thing, Tanya, you had asked about the health insurance.
Right.
I don't know if everyone saw it. Town manager sent us kind of a breakdown of budget to actuals based on the new health insurance program that was rolled out this year. And there is some pretty good savings associated with that program. So, and I don't know if you were going to present this later or not, but, I mean, it's, it's looking like 400.
Yeah, if we don't present it publicly tonight, I'll do it next Thursday.
Okay, but it's over 400K across the town and the school, so.
On
it is
actives alone.
On actives alone, right, that doesn't include the retirement.
Because there are retirees on active health insurance plans that were implicated by these changes. So if you are a retiree of a certain age, you're on an active plan. So the numbers that you have in your mail is just based on July actuals for active employees for town and school.
And what's the timeline on those funds coming through or being able to see how much we can allocate towards?
It's in the budget.
That's just cash management,
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's managed by town or by school, or both?
both.
Oh, okay, yes, sir. Well, I don't know if you were done, but you can
Yeah,
come back.
Thank you, I think, yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
So, I appreciate you presenting the research, and I think this is why the state in its limited wisdom gives school committees and credentialed superintendents the roles that they have. In my view, we just went through a process where the schools asked for $1.6 million to basically keep us at level service to where we were for FY '26, including the $500,000 in free cash that we spent last year. $1.6 million. We're talking about somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000, depending upon how you calculate this. I'd give you $1 million. I'd give you 1.2. I would borrow from other departments. And candidly, I wouldn't quibble with how you spend it. Because my expectation is that you're going to spend it in the right place. That being said, I think we all have to sit here and recognize the political reality of this process. During that process, the first thing that we heard when we talked about the schools were class sizes, and then middle school sports, and then sports transportation. We heard about it over and over and over again. And as we begin to close the gap, those are things that we are not addressing here. And I think that we just have to be honest with each other and say, we're about to enter another budget year, right? And it ain't gonna be good. We're not gonna get another override. We're gonna be making really hard decisions once again. There's probably gonna be some interdepartmental battles going on for money. And we just went through a process that said, we're losing classroom teachers, we're losing sports. As more incremental money becomes available, we're not closing those gaps. And I fully understand the logic and how you presented it, but I think that's gonna be a really tough story to tell over the next 6 to 8 months. And I don't know what to do about it, candidly, right? I do have a question, which is, I've heard from a lot of people on this from all over the place over the course of the last month. I haven't heard from an elementary school teacher, not one. what do they think? Have any come forward with any opinions? Have they spoken at school committee meetings?
I have not heard from any elementary school teachers. I'm sure at our next public hearing, we very well may have some teachers come forward and discuss the challenges, from space constraints to being able to manage class sizes that are that large. That's the reason I am leaning so tightly into the research base on this, because it's incumbent upon me and the school committee to make budget decisions that are grounded in research, grounded in what research shows us to be best practice. And it's very important for me to do that. Now, to some people, class sizes are a headline, and quite honestly, I'm actually very concerned about that second grade class size. That is borderline critical range.
31 kids.
Yeah, 30 to 31. We are losing several students at the high school because of the sports issues and our ability to remain viable in certain arenas. We are losing students at the elementary level to school choice because of the class sizes. And those things are very, very important. I recognize that to the community, they are critical. However, again, leaning into what studies have shown us are provide the most tangible outcomes for students is what I'm trying to do. And it may sound overly academic to some people and go against common sense, right? What people think is common sense. But I am using the knowledge I have, the research that I've done into these issues to make what I and the school committee believe, I can't speak for the whole committee, what I believe are proposing are the best changes most likely to impact student outcomes. When, without saying too much, our student data that we can see that is not unembargoed yet, that will be in the beginning of September, we need to do something, and we need to do something urgently. We are facing an academic crisis in our schools, and it's not just from 1 year. I think it's from several years of repeated cuts that the schools have had to take. And I know the town has also taken steps. I'm not disagreeing with that at all, and I realize it's the political arena that we are working in. However, the cost of educating students in unfunded mandates continues to increase. And the consequences now that we're seeing with our students, the research that is out there on students' failure to be at grade level at the end of third grade is really eye-opening. And students are more likely to end up in prison. Students are more likely to end up homeless if they're not reading by third grade. And there's universal studies on this. And so that's why I'm focusing so much on the literacy. And I understand the political arena. I have actually tried to lift myself out of the political arena and focus more on the academic arena for this particular purpose.
Can I add to that? So you mentioned the sports transportation, middle school sports, and classroom teachers. We cut many things last year. And as you know, we cut many things the year before. The year before that, we had an override, and we still cut things. Middle school sports, the sports transportation, and the classroom teachers are the most visible thing to the public. It is certainly the thing that's affecting parents most. It's the thing that people are upset about, these classroom sizes of 30 to 31 kids in second grade. It is a very public figure that is very off-putting to people, but that's not everything that was cut. It's just the most visible and the thing that gets people the most emotional. But Dr. Fortuna's job is not to only restore things that the public is emotional about. Her job is to do what's best for the students and the most effectively use the limited funds we have. There were many cuts made: mental health support, guidance, expense lines were cut to the bone, services, art supplies, library books. These things were also cut. So I don't want to just focus on those cuts that are the most public or even the most shocking to people, even though I do understand the question of why aren't you just restoring classroom teachers? And the answer is because this is the best way to spend the money.
Were you done?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Go ahead, Anna.
So Peter, I just want to, the override was for 1.7, but the level services number, I think it was around 780,000.
Okay, that wasn't my recollection, but.
Yeah, I looked in our finance report today, it was 1.6.
I mean, I have the copies of I don't have my laptop open, but the number that was given, was around 780,000.
I think it was a little higher than that.
Little
I
higher?
think it was over 800.
Okay.
I think it was about 820, but I'm not.
Right, but
I
it
haven't
is,
completely brain.
that was the level service
Yes, that was
to
the level
maintain.
service.
And the 1.7 was a restorative ask to get the education level to what we
Correct.
needed to do.
Correct.
So
Where was the
Actually-
500,000 free cash? Was that allocated as a level service?
That was not allocated.
There was really no
last
level
year. That was
service
just-
budget presented.
No,
No,
because
There was a core services.
Look, I mean, any way you want to calculate it, and I understand your point, I appreciate it. I think it only further underscores my point, if the number is lower.
I wasn't disagreeing with your point, I just want to, us all to be talking about the same number.
Fair.
That's all. Dr. Fleury, you said something, you said, the services that we need to do something now urgently because of the status of where our kids, our education is. And I just want to thank Mandy for taking upon herself to collect over 300 signatures to get this town meeting now, because otherwise we were going to have to wait a third of the school year to get these services in place. And, and it takes a lot of guts to do what Mandy did, and I just want to, thank her just as I thanked Matt earlier. One other comment, we're here talking, I know that first of all, what you're bringing forward, I totally understand with my little knowledge of what education is. I know, these monies are coming later. You already have the classroom sets ready, teachers are prepared. It would be, starting from zero, something that usually you start probably in April to plan for the next school year. To come July 9th, have to redesign that based on adding 1 or 2 teachers or 3 teachers. And I can see how you don't see the bringing the same benefit as to the plan you laid out. I also want to mention that this is something that Tony, who's a member of the school committee, has said. First of all, I think we need to maintain some core. At a minimum, we had tried to maintain some core athletics programs, and again, I'm thankful that Matt is bringing that forward. But according to what Tony has said in meetings, is that this past year was the first year that the athletic programs had any reduction in service. I think it was too much. I wish it wasn't as much, but I'm saying that because, they are restoring, the way I see it, because I keep that, let's say $100,000 in my mind, you're getting about half of that money to put something in services, and you're putting half of that money, right now, the money you're getting towards education. Unfortunately, it's not going to be enough to do that $800,000. So in my mind, you're still about $400,000 short to what you needed to be at, level service to FY26. So that's all. Thank you.
I think you'll see, and we saw from the data we have, level services last year were not enough, because test scores are gonna be, they're not gonna reflect the cuts from this year. The cuts from this year are gonna be worse. They're gonna be much, much worse. They're reflecting the cuts from the year before that we took. So I wanna just I want people to keep that in mind, that level services was not enough.
Okay, any other?
Tony, I think Tony.
Can I just make a quick comment? Mr. Chair. So I want to respond to something that Peter said. Peter and I get along really well. I talk to him all the time. I just disagree with Peter on this point. And I understand that essentially he's saying, the spoon full of sugar helps the medicine go down. That if we want to engage the public and have them support the schools and raise money, that we need to throw them a political loan. And I think that what I would say to that is that we have gotten our country into a mess by focusing on politics and not governance. And politics is something that appeals to people's emotions. It's something that's easy to understand and digestible. It gets people angry or it gets people happy. But that is not how the real world functions. If you look at what happened with childhood leukemia, it was almost completely cured because the experts did not follow emotion, they followed science. It went from a disease that killed 90% of children to a disease where 8% of children that contracted it died. And the process to get there, to develop combination chemotherapy that treated childhood leukemia, was brutal, it was painful, but at every single point, Emil Frederick was guided by expertise, by science, not by emotion. And he did something remarkable. We are in a really tight budget scenario. And the only way that we can carry out our mandate to improve student achievement is by following science, by following what the data shows. And I know that it's painful, and I know that everybody would like to have certain things, their favorite item put back. Whatever their favorite item is, that's the one they want put back. But at the end of the day, if we allow politics to overwhelm governance and emotion to overwhelm expertise, we will not solve problems.
Tony, I don't think we disagree
Okay.
on the basic premise here. I think the problem is, where was the science 5 months ago?
Oh, we've
Right?
been
I
having
mean,
the same discussions.
the conversation that we had 5 months ago was about classroom sizes and athletics, right? Like, these are the topics that were the first topics that we talked about.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, but the politics matter. You're gonna be fighting for a budget in 4 or 5 months. And how many people you can get to say, I want the school budget to be the top priority, matters. It matters.
I get it.
It matters to the kids who are gonna be sitting in classrooms, not in FY '27, but in FY '28 and FY '29 and beyond. So, I mean, we can have an honest argument about it, but, and once again, this is why the school committee gets to direct these funds, and the superintendent is advising the school committee and not the finance committee. I support the funding. I want to give you the money. I will make as passionate an argument at the next town meeting as I did at the last. But I think you have to be very careful about how you're playing with the voters' minds. And the voters are not going to look at the science. The voters are going to say, what was on that list last year? Oh, well, what happened? And it, honestly, I mean, it's hyperbolic, and I shouldn't say it, but it feels like a bait and switch. And I think some people are going to interpret it that way.
I think if you watch the March 18th, 2026 meeting of the school committee, we had that same experience. We have been talking since November of 2025 in front of the tri-board meeting about what the priorities were, and then it did not happen. And I completely acknowledge that that was an issue. I understand what you're saying. I understand why it seemed like a bait and switch. I don't think that was anybody's intention. I think that what the administrative team tried to do was to try to make the shape of the school smaller but similar to what it looked like in the beginning. And at the end of the day, when you looked at what we were told at the tri-board meeting, what we were told at that initial budget presentation in November, that's what we tried to enact when we made the cuts. It wasn't that it was different in the sense of what we were told, what the numbers showed. We were talking about the Tennessee STAR study in November, and the classroom size issue in November. In fact, we talked about it the year before with Dr. Burnham and Dr. Bookus, and I pushed pretty hard on the Tennessee study and their reliance on numbers that were higher than what the Tennessee study suggested. I think that that March 18th meeting was problematic. And I think that hopefully, moving forward, the presentations that we've done will remain consistent with that proposal. Because the presentations that Dr. Fortuna gave us in November, in December, in February, in April, all of them said the same thing, which is what she's saying now. There was one blip, and I completely understand why it's a problem. I think if you look at the evaluation for Dr. Fortuna, that was explicitly mentioned as a problem, and I don't disagree. Like, that meeting did not go well. And that proposal that we received from the administrative staff was completely different than what we had been told 4 or 5 times before. And if you watch the meeting, you can see that all of us were both surprised and upset by what was in front of us. Because those proposals did not follow the science. These proposals do. And I think that if we get into this game of trying to offer bread and circuses or red meat to people, we are going to lose the thread. And we don't have much thread left.
You know.
I have a quick question. Dr. Fortuna, the reading specialist that you want to implement in both of the schools, are you doing those positions so they can broadly scope more grades and reach more kids? Why wouldn't you add another teacher?
The reason is to focus on the students that are most at need, based on data and progress monitoring for those students. So a reading specialist can serve K through 2. A reading specialist can serve grades 3 through 5. It's not just diluting resources to that one classroom.
So you swapped out these 2 specialists for a broader scope of assistance? Yes,
I
okay.
also want to say it is cheaper. And we're talking about children's lives and the trajectory of their lives and their chances of becoming homeless, their chances of going to prison, statistics that affect their lifelong
Don't say
earning
those,
potential.
that's not true.
But it is.
I just looked it
Yeah,
up.
I'll send you the study.
Please
Yeah,
do, I
I'll
just
send you
looked
the
it up.
study.
All right, so I do want to,
But I want to point out that it is cheaper. I know we try to focus on the human part, but for you guys in the finance committee, it is cheaper to fix reading problems earlier than it is to fix them later. It is significantly cheaper to pull a kid out of a kindergarten classroom and go over a specific vowel sound than it is to let them continuously fall behind, to let them internalize feeling bad at school, to let them continue to miss instruction because they're not missing something basic that should have been explained to them that the teacher doesn't have the time to explain to them. It's significantly cheaper to fix that at the source with a few weeks or a few sessions of tutoring than to let it linger for years, and now we have a middle schooler who can barely read. It's just cheaper. It's also the ethical and moral thing to do, but you guys in the finance committee, it's cheaper.
okay, I just want to say one thing. I have up our annual report from last year, the Tier 1 core override, town department, $754K, school department, $1.6 million. Tier 2 restorative, town departments, $1.296 million, school department, $1,948,000. So the Tier 1 override last year was for $1.6 million for the school.
And that was the logic that I was using. I don't know if it was level surface or not. It probably wasn't, but that was the logic.
It was.
I didn't disagree with your point, Peter, just, yeah, it was, I just have too many spreadsheets
I
memorized.
totally understand.
Okay, so I do want to say, and I've said this many times, we need to maintain a good working relationship across the school committee, the superintendent, the town manager, the select board, and the finance committee, because we are in difficult times across the entire town. So I don't like the notion of the politics behind it. I don't like the notion of you're going to have to fight another department on it. And maybe that's what it comes down to in the end. But I do want facts and data brought to this. And if the real message that the school committee, through the guidance of the superintendent and her staff, is that the most important thing for us is X, that when we're talking about not getting the override and the impacts of it, we talk about why, right? And that's kind of the problem that we've had, is that I thought with this 400K coming in, and everyone always talking about class size, that it would have been about class size.
Class size is a symptom, I know we've talked about it, it is a symptom of a much larger problem and a very underfunded.
Okay, so
It is not the
All right.
problem, it is a symptom.
Okay. So listen, all I'm saying is that I think consistency and clarity of message is very important as we go through this process. And if the priorities are 1 to 10, and you're going for your number one priority as you should, don't mention your 7th priority as pretending to be your number one priority. That's the only thing I'm gonna say, because you start to lose me, you start to lose the public, you start to lose a lot of people who don't spend 10 hours a week listening to our various boards and committees and everything else. I know there's a lot of people in town that spend a lot of time on that. Hope maybe we could monetize it somehow, but, and then, so anyways, and we've got a long road ahead of us. The only other thing I want to say is that I get it that we have the process for citizens petitions on things, but we do kind of have a process in place for things like why special town meeting is in November. And it's for things like, because we don't have free cash yet. We haven't really settled in on stuff. So although these are options for people, and I will not try to say that they're not options for people, I think the general process that we utilize for things is kind of the better approach for things, okay? And there's a lot of mechanisms for getting your own petitions in there through the normal process. So we are where we are today. We're not talking about policies today. We're talking about special town meeting. But those are kind of a couple things I wanted to just, kind of lay out there from my perspective. And I do appreciate, your presentation. If we can move on now to the grants.
So I started your presentation, or the presentation that you're going to see with our federal entitlement grants. We were told to expect about $100,000 less than our allocation in Title I this year, which was a bit of a panic mode for us. But our allocation for this year is $193,820. This grant is specifically needs to be allocated to students most at risk of failing. And what we can do is we can use this to help teacher growth and lift the performance of our teachers, so we are truly realizing that 1.5 years of growth. Title II is, our allocation is $28,443. Title II is specifically identified as it must go to professional development. And Title IV is for safe and healthy students, and our allocation for that this year is $15,109. Both Title II and Title IV are relatively flat.
How do these compare to what you were budgeted for?
Title I is substantially higher than what we anticipated that it was being, and you'll hear how we're going to apply those to help our students.
And when you, about 100K more, is that what you said?
Yeah, we
Okay.
were told to expect about 96,000.
Okay, thank you.
This is sorry. So what we're going to use Title I for is targeted instructional coaching. And this is where I hope you start to see a through pattern and strategic use of all funds. So in the first part of my presentation, we discussed using literacy and school culture and climate as 2 priority levers. So what we're going to do, our only 2 schools currently that are Title I eligible are Primary and Turkey Hill Elementary School. The middle school and high school are not Title I eligible based on the federal funding formula. So what we are going to use this for are 4 levers: instructional coaching, evidence-based literacy instruction, student outcomes, and systemic alignment. We are really going to build internal expertise and our teachers' instructional leadership skills to vertically help align systems to best support those diverse learning needs. We're going to provide targeted professional coaching to build robust educator leadership capacity, and we're going to strengthen core reading and writing instruction to improve that Tier 1. Tier 1 is the instruction that all students get. Title II primarily supports our mentoring program, which is a legally required mandate from the state. So As a result of the majority of that funding going to pay for mentoring and mentoring courses, about only $1,061 remains as an allocation, and we're going to use that for math professional development at targeted grade levels. Title III, which I didn't mention on my opening slide, is targeted towards English language acquisition. As you may remember from some of the previous presentations that I gave, we have a growing number of multilingual students in our district. We are a member of a consortium with North Middlesex Regional School District, and our portion of that is $10,431. We are allocating that for the Elevations program, which is a comprehensive subscription for data-driven English language management, student tracking, and instructional planning, to send our teachers, our English language teachers, to the MathSolve conference, which is the Massachusetts Association for Teachers of Language, and for supplemental supplies. So that is what we're budgeting these for. For safe and healthy schools, our allocation is $15,109, and what our framework for implementation is for this is around trauma-informed practices, clinical consultation, school climate and culture, and needs-aligned support. We will continue to engage with a consultant that was very helpful to us as we went through some very difficult times last year with the loss of a student, and we will be expanding those strategies to more grade levels this year. Our 240, our special education IDEA grant, our allocation there is $423,413. How this will support our students is with out-of-district tuitions, IEP accommodations, and professional development for our teachers of students with disabilities. Grant 262 is another special education grant. However, this one is targeted specifically for the preschool. And this is allocated towards the paraprofessional staffing in our preschool. It obviously does not cover a whole salary of a paraprofessional in our teaching our preschool program. Those are grants that are entitlement grants that we can count on year after year, except with the scare that we had with Title I, with what they told us to expect this year. It's relatively flat with what last year's allocation was. So those grants have been written and submitted to DESE, thanks to our wonderful grant writer, Dr. Sarfti. Another competitive grant that was just unembargoed that we can say that we got is focused on pre-K through 3 literacy instruction with a specific focus on preschool and closing the preschool gap. So students already in preschool are exhibiting gaps. And what we're going to use this to do is we're going to use this to implement a consistent pre-K curriculum. It's called Focus on Pre-K. It's the curriculum that Boston Public Schools uses for their preschool programs. And it's focused on oral language development, vocabulary building, and purposeful play. That's what I love most about it. And purposeful play to build the students' skills. And because our district data currently shows that right now about 42% of our K-3 students are below benchmark. That's almost half, as you well know. We have received an earmark from that Senator Cronin very generously included in the state budget. And this is targeted towards infrastructure. We don't have a formalized spending plan for it yet, but items under review are some American with Disabilities Act accessibility features, an example of which is making central office handicap accessible, which it currently is not. And then our auditorium, I'm sure this team, and I'm not even sure the school committee, it realizes that our auditorium, and Walter can probably explain this better than anybody, can't be rented out for things like dance recitals, etc., because our lighting and sound systems are either broken or antiquated. And so nobody wants to rent it. One of the things that we have earmarked for the earmark was flame retardant for all of our stage curtains throughout the district that we had been out of compliance for. So those are the grants that we know of so far. There is that grant that is out there for the Ignite tutoring seats. Dr. Softy has submitted that. Again, the time frame for notification is unclear for that grant.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Chair, you had asked for insight into our athletic revolving account. This I was able to provide today because I did have something to reconcile this against. Our current athletic revolving account balance is $151,421.83. This balance represents the total retained revolving funds. As you know, it's to maintain equipment operations and sports program continuity across the district. Our starting balance this year was $152,280.91, and expenditures so far in fiscal year 27 have been $859.08.
Do you have an understanding of how much you have targeted to spend out of this account this year?
I don't. I can give you, not off the top of my head, but I can provide you with what we spent last year. The abrupt resignation of our business manager has really set us back on our heels a little bit.
Yeah, the question also becomes, is like this a source for the Article 3?
No, it would not be. I know the numbers match up very nicely, but this is not something we would want to spend down to zero.
I'm not saying it has to be to zero.
Yeah.
Because the question is, you may have to start getting 50K here, 50K there, 25K there to do this, but.
Let me update you on what we expended last year, which was fairly.
Okay.
This is continually replenished by user fees?
It's user fees, gate receipts as well. And I know, Mr. Chair, you had asked for a third quarter report. The reason I couldn't provide it for you is because until talking to the town manager and finance director of the town, I had nothing to reconcile it to.
Okay.
And I was seeing a couple of different reports presented to me in different ways. So I wasn't confident that the information I was giving you was ready for prime time.
Okay. And I think what we'll find is that, maybe this quarter, we get a C, and then next quarter we get a B,
Yeah.
and then, we eventually get to the state of getting an A.
Yes, I'm hoping to do that.
Although everyone gets an A, right?
No,
Can I,
no trophies for everyone.
can I just make one comment? On the infrastructure earmark. And I recognize this is an earmark and the school committee can do whatever it wants with it. How long are we going to kick the can on the track and field? We need $200,000 to get bid-ready documents for the track and field. $175,000 is pretty close to 200.
To be perfectly honest, I'd like to see if we even have athletics next year. We have cut everything to the bone, and if we have to sustain the same number of cuts this year that we sustained this coming year that we sustained last year and the year before, there's no point in rebuilding a track if we don't have a football team. There's no point. Yeah, it's a community resource, so it should, but it's not.
I would
gonna be
remind
something-
everyone that it started as a community resource, and then only because of its proximity to the school and the ability to schedule it and everything
And the
else,
security
it
issues.
went under the school committee's, purview. But it started out under parks and as a community resource. So even if
Since the track was built, there have
hold on a
been
second. So even
security
if sports are not to occur in the schools, there's still a need for community resource for recreation and health and everything else. So I think it's a good suggestion as a potential source for it.
Yes, this earmark was for the schools, though, correct?
Yes, but thank you for the suggestion. One of the things that we're actually concerned about too is with that recent torrential rainstorm we had, it caused more damage to the turf field, as you can imagine, because of the drainage issues.
I could have told you it was gonna happen, and I have every year for the last 4 years. Like,
I
it's,
understand that, I mean, the track condition it's rough. That retaining wall makes me very nervous. It makes me very nervous. If we knew what the future held, absolutely, we should be working towards that. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what our budget's gonna look like next year. This isn't a threat, like, this is just the reality of what our budget is.
Okay. Any other questions on grants? All right. I thank you both. It's been a long night, but I do want to at least start on the discussion on the town Q3 report. And again, thank you both.
Thank you, thanks.
I'm gonna take two because you just. I could be here, but I was nervous, Joe was gonna be a nudge there for a minute. Which seat do you prefer?
Go ahead.
Okay,
That's what I'm gonna say.
all right. You have,
not simple style, only those three.
oh, rats, hold on a minute.
Come on.
I think you have. We're gonna send this to my home. Yeah, I need to send it to Walnut.
Chris, while we're waiting to bring that up, Dr. Fortuna, can I grab a copy of that culture survey? I would love to read that.
I didn't tell the respondents to have written, I will give you the data and the aggregate.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I just think it's super interesting and, mental health and student capacity and student
Yeah, I know.
vibes are very important. So I'd love to read it. Thanks.
Which one are we looking at?
You're gonna look at it says Q3, yeah.
The Q3 FinCom report, this slide.
Yeah.
No, these are my notes.
Oh,
You're wrong.
oh my God.
Well, it's each report I send them. So if they have questions, I can pull them out.
Just trying
We certainly got a lot of data sent to us the last few days, so, we can, over the next period of time here, drill on some stuff.
Absolutely, and absolutely send me emails if you have questions.
All right, do you have it?
I'm just waiting for it to go through that email.
I mean, impatiently had to send and receive a few times.
It'll take a few seconds, sometimes for emails to go through.
And then one other thing while that was coming up, I had talked to Jen beforehand a little bit. Some of these funds in the special revenue funds, it's not entirely clear what they're used, what they should be used for or what they could be used for. So I think as we kind of evolve this a little bit, maybe some insight into what we could use those for or what the plan is. Like some of them are like $50 and $100 or.
Those will be closed out, those I just, myself, ran into those.
Yeah.
And so, at the end of fiscal year '27, I'll have.
Okay. There's one for 82 cents.
Yes, there is.
We need it. We need that.
Wait.
Where's it going?
There's one for 10 cents.
Well, it's in the ether, traveling between. Do you remember when the
Sorry.
interim town manager would say often that this has got to be the most complicated chart of accounts that I've ever seen? This is the kind of stuff he was, remember Carter would always say that? This is what he was talking about, these drips and drabs of all these little accounts.
I actually put I was reading through them, and I literally wrote LOL, max your payphone. I had to make a note. When was the
last time, we got revenue from payphone.
I forget where I was, but I saw a working payphone somewhere.
Oh, wow.
I know.
There's one in Gardner, I know.
There is one hanging on the side of Gardner Middle
Yeah.
School, but it is not functional.
You got it,
No, there's one
okay.
at a gas station there?
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, I saw
I had to
one
take a picture.
just this spring at Gardner Middle School.
What's it cost? 25 cents? What is it?
It doesn't work.
$500?
So, yeah.
How much does it cost to use a payphone now?
And it takes nickels.
I know, what would it cost? Is it?
Right?
Yeah. Oh, it converted your font, but that's all right.
Okay, we ready? Good evening. My name's Karen Barrett. I'm your finance director. I'm here to talk about Q3 fiscal year '26. We're going to we'll overview the general fund revenues, general fund expenditures, and the enterprise funds. Oh, yep. Now, some of you might say, wait a minute, this doesn't equal 100%. 5% of this would be free cash and available funds, but 64% of the revenue that comes into the town is made up of property taxes, 20% is state aid, and 11% is local receipts. And again, the other 5% is free cash or available funds. The town of Lunenburg's property tax revenue, we've collected 75% up through 3/31, and then of course the bills went out, and we've since collected pretty close to 100%. State aid, the collection so far through 3/31 were $8,160,000. Collections yet? Hold on, I'm just catching up with my report here. And then we were expecting $11,244,000. Of that, $318,000 is supposed to be the smart growth. But a few years ago, we were promised $500,000 on smart growth, and we didn't receive it. So
We don't have this yet.
Yep.
On here.
We didn't have it then at 3/31. I still haven't seen it, so,
So there's a chance we may not get that at all?
correct.
The report was submitted to the state by the assessors?
Yes.
So,
It's just but they, that happened to the town a few years ago. They got a call like in March.
And that's the one that's.
this is based on the actual, it's a formula, but it's based on the actual students enrolled from Tri-Town.
I know what it is, but are we talking about Q3 '26?
Yes.
And that was an FY '26 cherry sheet allocation
Yes.
that we
Don't-
still have not received?
Correct.
Has anybody called the legislator about this?
No, so we're just doing this reports now, we'll follow
Yeah,
up
we're
with all.
just starting to roll
Is it
into the end of the
normal?
year.
Is it a normal thing that this happens, or?
I've never been in a community with
Smart
this,
growth
with
would be
smart
either.
growth.
I was shocked to hear that you
There's
had gotten
only
a call.
handful of
Yeah.
communities that are on this program.
So there's probably somebody in Boston who needs to
I got a
a
call,
bunch of checks.
The same guy who redlined us 3 years ago. Took us off.
I got a call that from the state, that Maura Healey was putting, Governor Healey was putting it on her budget. But did it ever go through? I don't know. And I know, for this year as well. But,
So this year, this
yeah.
year it went up,
So-
but for 26.
so I don't know. We're gonna have to call them. We're just starting to, like she said, come in. I just got the other day all of the June receipts posted. So we're just starting to get into some of this now. Where did I leave off?
Revenue.
Yep, okay. So at the local receipts, let's see, we budgeted $3,415,000. Through March 31st, we brought in $3,961,000. We're 116% over collection, or anticipated collection. The investment income and motor vehicle seem to be, are the ones exceeding the budget, and those seem to be the ones in play. Those are usually, you will find, or I found over the years, that those are governed by what's going on in our world as a whole. Back when COVID, you couldn't get parts, they weren't selling new cars, everyone was holding on to their old cars. people can't afford new cars, they don't, so it's all, motor vehicle would all be driven by the time, by what's going on in the economy at that time. And same with investment income. My husband is a CPA, and he was actually taking some of his senior customers to banks a few years ago because the interest rates were so high, and the seniors did not realize it, and so they weren't, the banks weren't giving them the interest rates they should have been. And again, and then a couple of years later, it started to go down again. And so, I mean, those are just cyclical, and you just don't know year to year what's going to happen, and that's why those are sometimes under budgeted.
But I will say that with the finance department reconciling and getting back on a regular track of receivables, these are the kind of data points that we didn't have in budgeting, what our actual collections were. So having this be on track and contemporaneous will make next spring, and really January, February, much easier. I know the finance committee wants us to come in closer on revenues, and this is the data that we need.
On investment income, one thing, we did pass that prudent investor
This,
rule.
this
that
is not
different?
that.
Okay,
This investment income has nothing to do with the prudent investor rule.
okay.
That's other accounts that can be invested differently because of the prudent
This
investment
is
rule.
cash flow.
This is cash sitting in the bank.
That's right.
Yeah.
We probably should get a report out on our investments as well, in the future.
Did you give them the trust
I
funds?
gave you your trust funds, but that was one of the, it was a separate spreadsheet.
But is it showing like what rates we're getting?
No,
and-
it's just showing you what you earned for that year.
Yeah. Okay, good.
We are going to have in, though, the gentleman who does all of our investing.
Okay,
That's one of the things
Yeah,
you
yeah.
guys asked for.
okay.
Right.
You were talking about revenues there, with having the books on time, will allow us for better projections. I know that there was a town meeting in Westford that they ended up allocating more in their spring town meeting than the town manager had projected because they knew they could adjust their projections in the fall before certified free cash was, it was part of that process. My question is, what is the mechanism for changing the projections for, because that's voted as a package in town meeting, right?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question.
You mean for raising your
So if we wanted to go to this town
miscellaneous
meeting
revenues?
and say, okay, we were wrong in May when we were here before you, could we go to, I think this is the question,
Yeah,
could we
yeah.
go to the November?
I never, I don't know.
I mean,
I know they've done it when you get, oftentimes when towns are doing it, it's because you get state aid that's above and beyond the revenues anticipated. I don't know about that question. Like I said, I have that call out to DLS. I will throw that on for the third question for tomorrow.
I know if you had miscellaneous revenue that you weren't expecting, let's say a rollback tax, lots of times they would let you come in and.
yeah, I mean,
change that.
like I said, I saw it happening in a town,
I think it depends on the tax, because they get pretty, like motor vehicle and some of the
Right.
other excise taxes, they will only let you bring up 10% unless you can.
Right, so, my question is, what is the mechanism for doing that? And I understand that we didn't, we couldn't make only the projections that we had, but, if we ever find ourselves in this place where we can see, let's say for local receipts, I think total local receipts last year was, between everything, was like 44.5 million, and we had projected.
I don't remember, I'd have to look back.
I think that's what it was like, 4.5.
Only one of us has these spreadsheets memorized, and it's not I.
Yeah, so I think our total revenue for local receipts was 4.5 million. We had projected 3.4. If these are things that we can see earlier, it may allow us to do bigger things in the fall. And here's the reason that I think about this kind of thing, because if we don't do that, we put a gap on that money for 2 years. So if we want to do a project, because if anything that's over projected is going to go into the end of July, June 30th, then it's going to be into free cash. It's not going to really be available until like
Following May.
yeah. So it's a 2-year gap whenever, so I see it to be, maybe we even have a fund that is projected overages, free cash, because and I wasn't in person on the free cash conversation. During our budget conversation this year, and I had the paper from last year and this year, you had it listed, if we don't use this money that can be available for the fall town meeting.
Yep.
And that didn't happen this year because we couldn't get cash certified until February, end of February. So maybe,
It's a completely fair question. I will definitely ask that with
right.
DLS.
And perhaps we can, instead of putting that in free cash, we just start a fund of free cash. So that way our money is not locked. This money has already been certified. Why not, don't we just put it in a fund that is available to us anytime we want and not lock our money out of our reach?
Like, use the free cash and put it in not a stabilization fund, not the vehicle special purpose stabilization fund, but a X special purpose stabilization fund.
Unappropriated, you've got a special town meeting, you can also hold
Well,
a special.
you
town
can't
meeting.
leave it unappropriated. That's where what happened now. June 30th, unappropriated, close the door. What she's saying is set it aside.
No, I'm
Right.
saying, even in the current fiscal, I agree with Anna's thinking here. You could theoretically adjust your revenue line at a special town meeting, but not appropriate that money. Or put it into a special fund.
Before we get too far afield and the what I've said
account?
could be possibles, let me have the conversation with DLS to make sure that we're talking about something that actually is in.
But these are the two scenarios that are in my mind, is like we either increase
do.
our projections
Right.
that allows us to appropriate, sooner rather than later, and even the free cash that we left unused this past year, instead of us getting locked out of our money, let's appropriate it into a fund, an account that is there available to us at all times. And
Sure.
since it will be one fund, it can be accumulative. We always know it's there.
There was a period many years ago, I think I was a kid and my mother was on the school committee, but there was a period of time where Lunenburg would hold a special town meeting prior to the annual town meeting. It was at the same place, same
Sometimes
time,
do that, yeah.
and you would expend unappropriated funds from the current fiscal. So you would have basically created a revenue line that was not a conservative revenue line, but then you wouldn't appropriate, because you weren't 100% sure. But then if the numbers looked good later in the year, you could dump that money into capital or whatever, right? And it's a different way of budgeting. It would completely screw up our fiscal policies currently if we did it that way, but I think it's, considering our current conditions, it's probably worth a look.
I mean, my goal is for us to not get locked out of our money.
I agree with you,
It's
100%.
Whatever way we decide to do, and I don't like that, just as Jim Bowles. Leaving it to the government. Hey, Jim.
All right, so I put that on as a future meeting topic.
And we'll reach out. Okay, moving on to general expenditures. 331, you're at 71.5% of your expended, keeping in mind that 2.6 of those dollars are open purchase orders, which could still flow back or be used as a purchase order. And then moving on to the enterprise funds. The water enterprise fund, the budget was 45, the actuals were 46, 852 as of the third quarter, and expenditures were 8,542. At that time, they were still working through with the city of Fitchburg for some of the people that are on the outer end of and they were still working through the total charges, and they worked it through.
We're still working through with Fitchburg some of the accounting.
Yeah. Sorry. Solid waste was, the revenue, or the budget was for 500,000. The budget was, I'm trying to read my notes here to the side too. The budget was for 500,000. We expended 81%. 66% of that are encumbrances, so if you really looked at it, we expended $339,205, but we brought in revenue of $364,164. And we started out with a fund balance of $222,940. Sorry,
That's okay. I don't know why these all got all jumpy on
I
the,
don't either.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
weirdly formatted, but I think.
It is, and then they kind of, yeah, it's weird.
1583, yeah. These numbers I think are supposed to be under budget. These actual.
Yeah, it's, it got a
I
little-
don't know how it jumped.
It got a little funky. Okay, the sewer enterprise fund. The revenues came in at $1,316,960. The expenditures were $1,404,000, includes encumbrances of $443,000. So if you remove the $443,000, you really have expenditures of $963,000, and you brought in revenue of $1,316,000. So you really have good cash flow there, and I think that's attributable to Bill Bernard. Bill, I can't even think of his name.
Bernard, yeah, in the
Because
sewer
I'm going to
commission.
call him Bernard.
His new name.
And so I think that's to him and his staff. They're doing a really good job.
Do we know if the, do we know if the accounts receivables have got better numbers?
This is all set.
And if
think
you
that-
don't, you just don't.
No, I
well,
think that there was some talk, right, at
yeah.
the sewer commission, that there was some talk that they had not been, is that what you're talking about, not had
Yeah.
great collection rates?
They were, I think, the last presentation, I missed Bill Bernard's presentation for the budget, but the one before, it was like at 27%.
Yeah, I think that in talking to the sewer business manager, those issues have largely resolved with the collections, as I understand it. And
Yeah, because they had a good collection.
they did have a good
26.
collection, right?
Yeah.
Sorry,
And then on to cable.
cable.
All right, cable. Cable started out with a fund balance of $946,153 for July 1st of 2025. The projected revenue was $225,000. As of 3/31, they had brought in $117,828, 52%, and the expenditures were $145,000 with $7K in encumbrances, which brings it to the expenditures to $138,000 with the revenues of $117,000. So I think you're starting to begin to eat into your cash, your prior year's cash.
The revenue budget,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so let's talk about this one a little bit more. Is this just more people are cutting the cord and we're not budgeting properly for that, or?
Part of it is that this is through March 31st, and I believe at least one of the checks from Comcast came in after that.
Right, this is all.
This is March 31st, right? So we have received actual funds since this. But to your larger point, the operations are not being sustained on the revenue year over year. And PAC is continuing to eat into its reserves and become more reliant. Joe and I have had conversations about scheduling and how to accommodate around that. I mean, that's going to be part of a larger conversation, I think, going forward in the next budget cycle. But
Well, I think when we had a discussion last year, they need to relook at their business model. What worked in the 1980s isn't working in 2026. Not their fault, it's just that's the way the world worked.
There was also some legislation last year that was
Pending.
gonna kind of move some of this to,
There-
you know, like the Netflix of the world.
streaming, yeah, there was like a legislation to basically have a fee applied to the streaming
that didn't go
services.
anywhere?
No.
I've heard about that, I think, for the last 4 or 5 years. Every year there's
It sounds like a good
potentially.
idea, but it's very hard to do probably, or impossible.
And I think the reality is our residents rely on these services for meetings such as this, to watch graduations, and for a long time, these funds were growing as, lots of cable access folks like our own have millions of dollars in reserves because they grew until they didn't. And the change is definitely upon us
It
now.
is kind of a tax on the few that benefits the many, though.
Yeah.
Showing my age, they talked about this years ago when it first started.
Yeah.
that this, taking it away from the towns, because the towns in the beginning were the ones controlling it and then bringing it into their own.
It's just, the legislation just has to get modernized. They just gotta figure it out.
They should, because it is a good tool for the residents. And then I also provided you with special revenue funds worksheet, and it tells you all the different, and also the trust and agency funds. With the special revenue funds, I did provide that to Chris a few times, because Chris McNamara over at the
Okay.
school, but I'm not sure that Jody is, well, they're all not, they're not familiar. But I'm not sure they had seen it, she had seen it, but.
With
And
the-
then not trust and agency.
Sorry.
No, sorry.
There were two funds that, on the funds that list, that, and I'm not gonna start up my computer's been a
Do you
long
want
day.
to look at mine, Liz?
Well, I can ask you, one was, the Conservation Commission has a large fund of almost $1 million, a little more. I didn't see that on the
I think
list.
that was a gift fund. You did not see it on the,
I didn't see that on the list.
I think that's a trust fund. Is it on the
Is it
trust
on your
fund? It's
trust
on your
fund
trust,
list?
I believe it's on that trust fund
I
report.
think I saw it because I said, oh, what are they doing with this?
I think it's on the trust funds.
Oh, okay. And there
I'm
was
almost
another-
positive. Hold on.
There was another one that I'm not gonna remember. I might find it.
We also, I had mentioned this to Jen before, we also voted at annual town meeting for that special ed stabilization account.
I don't think
So
so.
it's not been funded yet,
No.
but we did vote the fund in.
Yes,
So I think we should see it in the list with a $0 balance associated with it.
you will in the new year.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other fund that I didn't see, that I was looking for, was the school transportation revolving fund.
Well, I think that has
Oh,
a
that
number.
should be on here.
Yeah, I
go
think
ahead.
it's a number, right? It's like the athletic fund, it doesn't say athletic revolving, it has like a number
Oh.
Yeah, that
associated
one I was
with
able to.
it. To find, but I think the transportation is similar.
Go to revolving.
Yeah,
Keep going.
school transportation revolving fund.
The athletics is a 658.
So I'm wondering if it has a different numbering nomenclature
No, it wouldn't
Oh, I
be.
see the
There is no-
conservation.
on the trust funds.
I see it, yeah, it's under stabilization funds.
Oh.
I don't know, I was curious, what is the playground fund? That's quite a bit of money.
I was wondering about that. It's like, isn't it
It's like
like,
$250,000.
yeah.
This is why this is a great exercise.
With $250,000 in a playground fund?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if this was like when we rebuilt Wallace or I don't know, I was curious, I was like, wow,
Oh, my head.
let's get that done.
All right, well,
I do think like, there's a lot of information we're obviously
And
getting.
there was a $6,000 increase this year, might have been just.
Interest probably.
Interest,
Yeah, interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be.
so playground fund and the transportation, we can email those out, for sure. I know, they ought to be on the,
They have to be on the list. So. We'll mail them out.
I can look in munis.
That could solve the primary school playground problem.
That was literally what I was thinking.
Could be
It's not
useful.
enough for a track. It's enough for a track design.
Well, you take 25 from that.
They cobble it together, right?
Choice revolving, we have. Summer school revolving.
I'm wondering if it just has a different name in it.
Yeah,
It would
and
have a norm,
it's getting late too, so I don't know that we need all the, but I do think like one thing is if this could be in some kind of database or something where you're actually able to say, like, click on, what is the Citizens Relief Fund,
Oh,
right?
well,
Right.
you'd have to go out and, I'd have to go out and try to find all the grants. Once I'm settled in, I always make them give me a copy of a grant before I'll even set it up, and then I'll
Okay.
have a book. So
Yeah.
you'll know what the monies can be expended
Okay.
from.
Yeah,
In the meantime, I'll go out and see what I can find on the history of each one, and I'll get them cleaned up for 27, and then we can see,
okay,
where we're at. There's some that, they're gonna be governed by whatever the gift or grant says.
I think it says 1,600 account.
There's
I didn't see it on there.
Yeah, there's not such a number.
Nothing in it though.
Yeah.
That says transportation. All right, we'll follow up. That's it?
any other questions? All right, that's it,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, not a great public speaker, but the information is
Yeah,
there.
information is great, so thank you.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it.
Sorry, I'm not,
Thank you.
I suck at public speaking.
As long as you're good
No,
at
I
accounting,
think,
I really
yeah.
really don't care.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we had
If you need
a,
anything, though, and you have any questions, if you just reach out and let me know, I'm more than welcome to answer them. Anytime.
very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we had under old business, financial-related policies and capital planning representative, meaning we still need a capital planning representative, if anyone.
I looked at their schedule last year and I wouldn't be able to. It was just too erratic.
It was totally erratic.
I thought about it and it's just, I just can't. It's easier for me if I can say, okay, this day, and then I plan my schedule, but.
Yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't just last year. It
No,
was the same thing
Same thing every year.
previous
It's
year,
a funny committee, because 4 members meet on 4 different nights in other committees, so.
Right.
We just blame the chair of that.
Yeah, and the chair's an idiot. So do we want to act on either of those?
I don't know that we need to, I just put it there in case any of
Yeah.
these
Well,
topics
Tom
come
was
up.
gonna think about it.
Yeah, I looked at, I can do it if that's what I have, I've been following it, watched it sometimes, but if we need somebody, I can do that.
Okay. So technically, that's a 3-year term? Do you want to do it as only a partial of that
No,
3-year
I mean-
term or the 3-year term?
Hopefully I'll live those 3 years.
Okay.
Is the term closing? Is the term reopening? Do you know, or?
Yeah, because I'm done, I've been on it 3 years.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion to appoint Tom Gray as our representative to the capital plan committee for the term of 3 years.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, okay, so Tom.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Yes, thank you.
You guys did it for enough times.
Okay, we took a vote tonight.
Yeah.
All right,
We will have to have a conversation with Jen about at least helping them to call a meeting, because right now they're
chairless.
chair and vice chair have vacated the committee.
I wasn't,
You were the vice chair, weren't you?
no, I don't think I was.
Oh, no.
Was it Caesar?
I don't know. You know what? I don't know.
I don't, yeah, anyways,
All right, we gotta figure that out.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I don't have any minutes listed. Any committee reports? Okay, any public comment?
Yes. At the last meeting, I had brought up the idea of creating operating protocols for the finance committee. And I'd like to ask that be added to a future agenda. And I have gone through and taken the effort to actually draft operating protocols.
Love that.
So, I'm sorry?
Love it.
These are long and largely driven by AI prompts, candidly, using sources from state law, finance committee handbook, our charter and a few other documents, and then a bunch of prompts that I wrote. But it is, really expected to be a draft and only a draft, and maybe worth discussion at a future meeting, and take it for what it's worth.
Is this in our SharePoint?
Nope, I literally, because I didn't want to do it prior to tonight's meeting, I wrote it, printed it, and I can add it to the SharePoint and
Is
distribute
it,
it in soft
are we
copy.
following bylaws if he adds it and we can add comments to it?
So I want to be very
Or
careful
questions.
about not
Right.
violating open meeting law
Right.
in a document that tells us that we have to follow open meeting law.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
So I don't think that we can do like a live edit in SharePoint as a committee, but what you could do is,
Open meeting.
and again, this would be something we would have to have as an agenda item in terms of
Yep.
how we do this, but we could appoint somebody as sort of the master / organizer of it, receives all comments, and then goes through in a future meeting, and we resolve comments, or take this section, add
Yep.
this section, whatever. That's how we did it in the school committee on a variety of documents.
So you can probably put it into SharePoint and lock it or something, so that no one does do that.
I also don't have
Yeah.
access to SharePoint right now, so
You don't?
we'll solve for that too. I can't get in for whatever reason, but I'll get in, we'll figure
You
it out.
need a new computer.
Yeah, that too.
All right. Okay, so our next meeting is in 2 weeks, August 27th, public hearing. I'll put out the agenda for that. It sounds like you'll be here for that? It's here.
Another person will be here for that.
Someone will be here for that?
Yes.
Okay, excellent, I love it.
Chris, before you adjourn the meeting, I just want to say one point of caution that is making me very worried about all the financial stuff going on, particularly with the schools, is that they don't have an established finance team. So I'm really nervous about talking about that and voting on things when there's not anybody there to manage the allocation of any funding that we bring over. So, or that we vote, that we vote on to move forward. So just
Yep.
something out there. So
Yep.
I think we may want to get that information.
Yep, I think there's certainly a lot of concern about that right now. Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, we are adjourned.